Are you telling me that the Fakertarians want to make... They have things on there. They're not even like humans. And they're like making comments. They try to make the most degenerate comments.
Archie, get the fuck off my stream.
What's the thing with like that what's his name? Hudak guy? Like who is, I will say, Nick, on the show you were at there, right? Amongst them, he's the smartest.
I believe Fakertarians has done more damage to the Libertarian Party than anybody Fakertarians tries to damage. Because it's a bunch of people who have no official position, they're just tweeting on their own personal timelines, and Fakertarians goes and screenshots it and publicizes this is what's wrong with the Libertarian Party.
Fakertarians has lost so much credibility that no one is willing to... It's the boy who cried wolf. Like, they might actually be right one day. Maybe there'll be one day where there's an actual Nazi that someone puts on our show. We're just going to be like, eh.
Well, the Fakertarians hop on and they're like, ooh, that's anti-Semitic, and people are like, that's anti-Semitic, and I'm like, first of all, you fucking idiots, I'm half Israeli.
And while I'm at it, you know what? Fuck that page, those Fakertarians. Fuck that page too. And fuck all those guys. They're on my shit list too. Fuck them, giving me fucking shit for going on fucking Stefan Molyneux's show. Hey, they're fucking the Fakertarians one, who actually pissed me off more because from what I've been told, there's like a couple decent people attached to that. Fuck them. Fuck those guys. They're gonna fucking give me shit for fucking going on Stefan Molyneux's podcast to advocate against war because you didn't like that I called him great.
Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 43 of the Fakertarians podcast. I'm your host, John Hudak, along with Jeremy Kantorowicz, the Cosmic Cracker, Josh Hilditch, and our tech guy. So today we have on Brent Lengel and Caleb Maupin. And so thanks to both of you for being here. I know there are places both of you might rather be, like Brent debating Stefan Molyneux or Caleb at an Oswald conference, but how's everyone doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm about to launch a new Kickstarter, so I'm really excited about that. And my comic, Derudy, Shadow of the People, about...
here comes the selling points.
Yeah.
Fucking
Plug away. Plug away.
Really buy my book. Buy my book. Please. Buy my book.
I get that reference. The Critic is definitely probably one of the most underrated shows in existence.
Yep.
And there should have been more.
There definitely should have. I really liked the, what was it, The Boss, that was based on Ted Turner.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, he was definitely my favorite.
Tell us about Molyneux.
I love the Critic. Now, before we get into that, the Critic was fantastic, and all of you missed my other John Lovitz. It was like meta inside meta. When I said plug away, that was from his 1987 SNL bit. So, sorry, y'all. Like you gotta love it's in there. I gotta love it's in there. I'm old, and I'm gonna go like pee in the corner.
I was like 4 in 1987.
Here we go. Fully automated gulags. It's already started. Right. So tell us about Molyneux then.
Brent. Me or Caleb? Both of us debated him.
Did you both debate him?
Yeah, we both did. Caleb actually did it.
Oh,
first.
Caleb's mic is off.
Caleb, you're muted.
Your microphone is muted there, Caleb.
I debated him, and I found his style of debate to be interesting, is that he really appeals to victimhood, which is kind of hilarious from a supposed libertarian, right? I mean, it's like he wants to feel like a victim. As you debate him, he immediately goes, "Oh, you just called me racist. You just, I'm being victimized." I mean, it's that seems to be his style that he uses, which I thought was a bit amusing. Yeah, I thought our exchange went pretty well. I mean, he tried to just give standard right-wing anti-communist talking points, which I was prepared to handle. And then from there, well, that's not real capitalism, which is the equivalent of that's not real socialism. And I thought our exchange went very well. I'm really glad I did it. A lot of people said that our exchange was one of my better debates. Now, what's interesting is I made a point of recording it myself. Which is interesting because he was arguing with me with one of those microphones that immediately mutes you as soon as you talk. So I recorded it myself and released the recording where you could actually hear me speak every time I heard it make a point. So yeah,
kind of sounds like what a Nazi would do, right? Silencing you.
well, I mean, I don't know. I think all kinds of people silence their critics.
Yeah. With me and Stefan, I remember I wound up agreeing to do it at like the last minute. There's somebody else who was supposed to debate him, and JF, who's that's an interesting character.
I've heard of him.
Yeah. And so like, I agreed to do it at the last minute because the guy pulled out, and I knew they were going to be like, "Oh, the left is afraid to debate me. Our ideas just can't be handled." So I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm going to debate this weird egg obsessed.
Did he try and steal your wife's eggs by any chance?
You know what was funny? I opened the debate by offering him eggs, like chicken eggs, for my chicken.
Brilliant.
And,
we still cannot get a smile out of Caleb. This is going to drive me mad for the whole fucking podcast.
It's okay. I'm not. This isn't my usual style. The way I conduct myself and all that.
Do you
I'm
like to
cool
smile,
to be
Caleb?
here.
Do you like to smile?
Yeah, of
Do you like
course.
jokes?
But
Okay,
I do want to say, like, if this does turn into character assassination or insult comedy, I'm out of here. I mean, it's that simple. So, I mean,
Hey, we were just talking about you taking eggs.
Oh my god! And here we were just going to have Don Rickles on the show. Hey, Don, don't come on.
There goes that bit.
Yeah. But what was really interesting, actually, like with regard to debating Stefan, was that I accidentally called him Steven at the end, and apparently he hates that. And then by the end, then that was like legitimately a mistake. Like I went into that podcast going like, okay, there's no way I can have a good faith conversation with this guy, so I'm just going to trigger him and let him dig his own hole. The funniest thing, though, was like after I offered him the eggs and like made fun of the whole Taylor Swift eggs thing, JF just had to jump in and start talking about how important it was to fertilize eggs. And
what the fuck?
It's the weirdest thing. But like at that point, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm winning this podcast.
It's a cult. It's an egg cult.
It's an egg cult.
Please dive into that a bit more about like how important it is to fertilize. Of course it fucking is. You can't procreate without that.
Yeah. Well, again, it's JF, so he's not concerned about eggs in general, just very specific eggs.
Who's JF?
Do you think they fuck chickens? Because I really wonder if they fuck chickens.
I hope not.
Chickens are real short, as Lenny Bruce said. It'd be kind of hard, but I mean, if you got to fertilize them eggs, sometimes you just got to do it firsthand, if you know what I'm saying.
Canoe apparently really wants a rematch with me. I was scheduled on Modern Day Debates to actually debate Lauren Southern. She pulled out, and they wanted Molyneux to do a rematch with me, and I said no, because we debated once. I wiped the floor with him. I have no desire for a rematch. He didn't quite know what he was getting into, I think, and so he came back armed with a bunch of points. But I said no, I don't want to match with him. So there you go.
Would you have a rematch in the boxing ring?
Well, I don't know. I don't have much experience with.
You don't know, so it's open to opportunity. Oh, okay.
I'm personally hoping that Molyneux has a rematch with Cancer.
Yeah,
Jesus, dude.
Hey, Brian, I'm the one that's supposed to make the bad remarks. Okay, you settle down.
Hey, it's always like neck to neck with you and I.
Now, I will say, though, it actually kind of makes sense that Caleb and I are here talking about this because I think both my and his first time debating the alt-right was actually kind of at the same place. That was when you did that debate against Augustus Sol Invictus.
Yeah, I remember.
Augie Sunshine.
Yeah, Augie Sunshine.
He loves us.
That was a crazy night. That was an in-person debate. That was pre-COVID at a theater in Manhattan. At Theater Lab NYC, we rented it out, and that was pretty wild. Was that not a crazy night, Brent?
It was nuts. This didn't make it into the final video of it, but like one of the Proud Boys that came with him got like triggered because of something I had said to him, but got me confused and tried to attack the guy next to me. And they had to. Oh, do you remember that? They had to pull him and hold him back.
Yeah, well, I guess as he was making his final statement, there was some heckling, and then he brought these two guys that I think were like private security guards. He brought with him, and then the private security guards were like holding back his Proud Boy fans, which was a little odd. So
yeah, they again, just interesting
what was
people.
His face like, Brent, though, because he looks like he's got more pimples than the fucking Rocky Mountains.
Old crater face.
He did. I don't know what the heck happened to him. Is he still in jail? He was in jail last I checked.
I think he's out.
Yeah, I think he might be out on bond, but I know there's a
he's out on
case,
bond. I haven't
South Carolina.
seen much movement in his case in South Carolina. He got the one charge drop, but he still has the other.
Yeah.
Did he bring a goat along that night?
What surprised me was they came with weapons. I mean, the one guy, if you remember correctly, he had that cane with this huge brass handle on it. You know, that was clearly intended for clubbing people on the head. And I remember when I gave my opening statement, I sat down and he was getting up and giving his opening statement. He had left this huge knife on his chair as like a threat or something like that. It was just like sitting there on the chair, and that was amusing as well. It was a little bit odd. And I guess he was nervous to come to New York City where he couldn't carry his gun with him. He had made a video about how he had been on a Greyhound bus and gotten kicked off because he was carrying a firearm on the Greyhound bus and how angry he was. And he was quite upset to be coming to New York City without his gun, which is a little bit odd. You know, it's like this guy can't survive without carrying a weapon on him of some kind or something. I found that to be very weird.
Yeah, I think partially, like when I first moved to Manhattan, like I think there was about a week period where I carried like a lock knife with me, just because you hear stuff about Manhattan and you don't realize how safe it actually is. The biggest threat in Manhattan, honestly, is usually the cops. So like I think I lost it in a sushi restaurant about a week in and just never replaced it. And 10 years in Manhattan, never had a problem.
Yeah.
Do you remember when he threatened to have me to a boxing match? Brent, do you remember that?
Yes, I remember that.
He got very upset because I wouldn't come around apparently the corner to have a fight at his boxing ring, even though I live across the fucking sea, which is a bit of a problem.
Yeah, well, that's how I first met him. Was that I guess he has a gimmick when he was running in Florida. He challenged one of his opponents in the election to a mixed martial arts fight. And he was in D.C., so I interviewed him about it, and we talked, and it was a bit of a strange interview. And at one point, they had me ask him. I said, can you show us some moves for your upcoming fight? And he said, well, no. He said, my opponent will probably be watching the video, and I don't want to give anything away.
Shit excuse.
That's the adult version of all of my moves are fatal moves, and I can't show them to you without.
I'm gonna show some respect. I love how the way to Keller went. Show me your moves. Like
that guy. I mean, in person, is he as big of a dork as I think he is? Because he just seems like the dorkiest of the dorks. Like I just want to stuff him in a locker, and then like take him back out and like dip his crater face in the toilet for a bit. He's just that guy.
Was the accents, okay?
Because right, yes.
The accents, yes.
Yes.
Real Southern accent. And then other times, like at the debate, he sounded like Kennedy, right? It was this, it was this like Kennedy, New England kind of thing. And then I noticed when he wasn't like speaking, he just had a normal voice. And so I wondered what is going on there. Like, sometimes he's trying to sound like Kennedy. Sometimes he's trying to sound like a character from Gone with the Wind. Most of the time, he just sounds like a normal dude. Like that is a very odd thing. Like pick one accent, pick your normal voice. Like what's going on there? I was very perplexed by that. What I found was that when he wasn't performing, he almost seemed like an actor. I mean, it was just like he was just the most chill, laid back. Like, hey, whatever, okay, we'll do this. Whatever. But once he's up in front of the crowd, he's like suddenly playing a character, and that character has several different accents. I guess very odd.
Brilliant.
Was he wearing his Andrew Dice Clay gloves?
I don't know. I don't remember, actually. I think I saw his hand, so I don't think so. He did bring.
You quiz him on the accents, though? Did you quiz him on the accents? Did you say, why do you sound like a weird French person right now?
Yeah, I'm not enough of a jerk to do that, I guess. I should be.
Well, I am. Get me this.
Oh, me too.
I do remember, I don't know if you remember this, Brenton, but he brought 2 women with him. Do you remember this? That was pretty weird. They were like his submissives or something. It was some kind of BDSM thing or something, and
he's way into that.
Yeah, that was a little bit. I mean, we keep it in your private life. I think we didn't really want to be part of all that. It's a little strange, but one of them was Asian, if I remember correctly. So that was even more.
Was what? Sorry.
Yeah.
One of them was Asian, I believe.
Oh, I thought you said ancient. I was like,
no.
Okay, was he fucking a mummy or something? Or?
No, I remember the women that came with him. The 2 things that I remember was he was taller than I thought he'd be, and then like the other thing was that he had like yeah, like 2 goth chicks with him, but like not quite like not goth, but like Satanist. Like I would expect these women to be like, I love Anton LaVey. Like that was how they were dressed. And
Right.
you sometimes catch those people at goth clubs, but like not as often as you'd think.
Right.
Well, they're goat fucking sacrificers. You know, I mean, that's probably they all get around to have some goat orgy and then cut it up and eat it raw. That's what they do.
What's weird about that whole thing with the goat is that, like, in a weird way, I kind of feel like I might be the yin to his yang, because we were both born the same year. We both had a hard time in college. I went and hiked the Appalachian Trail, Maine to Georgia, and it like renewed my faith in humanity. And he like went off on like some unmarked trail into the wilderness and dragged a goat with him and supposedly killed it and drank its blood. So it's like he's the evil wizard to my Gandalf.
Yeah, one theory that I developed, and I mean, of course, I have no I have no smoking gun proof of this, but I wondered if it was possible, because so much of his material seemed to be like, you know, hints that he might be a serial killer. That if maybe after he wrote his manifesto and went into the woods and got expelled from the
started mailing bombs to people,
the OTO, the Aleister Crowley thing he was part of, and he wrote into the FBI right after he wrote his manifesto and kicked him out. And it occurred to me that maybe he was cooperating with the feds into some kind of fishing expedition. Like he was going to go around and like give all these vibes that he was a serial killer and get like actual serial killers to come to him and say, here's my plan or something like that. That was one theory I had, because it was very odd, because I mean, didn't he write a short story about a guy who rapes an underage girl or something?
I was not aware of that.
Yeah. And
there's some weird rapey fiction out there.
Yeah, so much of what he does is trying intentionally to give off like serial killer vibes, and then kind of going around the country and meeting people who might be attracted to him because of that. And that made me wonder if this was some kind of fishing expedition or something. But
what you're saying is, Caleb, you found Jack the Ripper. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, it occurred to me that perhaps that he was trying to track down other people who were attracted to such things, because it didn't really make any sense.
Sounds so creepy.
Yeah,
he's the guy that when I was like in 8th grade would be just like 2 or 3 years older than me at the local flea market, like buying all these crap knives, but buying way too many of them, you know, and they'd be like, hey, go ahead and throw in that black leather bracelet too. And it was like plastic, you know, but he's wearing it around proudly. I know that guy. And then later he's fucking goats, whatever.
Yeah.
I think a friend of mine who I won't say her name because she's kind of famous, but she was basically like,
so if she's famous, you can say her fucking name then, can't you?
Well, no, because he might be a serial killer. I don't want him to know she said it.
Yeah, it's like me saying, I won't say the Prime Minister of Great Britain's name. Come on. Like, come on, Brent. Fuck you know.
Again, like, if I give you her name, like, he could
She's
hear
famous,
it
Brent. Everyone knows her name of her. She's
no,
famous.
Actually, most people don't know her name. It would be a character. That,
I'm
not even going to go into that.
The philosopher.
Okay.
Yeah,
the philosopher. Oh my god.
I would wish. It's an entertainer. It's a pretty famous entertainer. But like, she was sitting there and she was like, "This is basically what happens if you don't grow past your goth phase. You either like become a professional goth musician or you go down this weird rabbit hole."
All right, Brent, I got to pull you up on that. You keep saying she's famous, and then the next second she's not famous. What is she then?
A little bit.
Okay, I'm going to say this much. She is the voice of a character on a very famous animated show that has run on Adult Swim, and that's all I'm going to say.
Angela Merkel?
No.
Oh, she's the voice of Louise on Bob's Burgers.
If only.
Oh, damn.
That was a very good guess.
Thank you.
Caleb, I just realized that Brent had joined the CIA there, keeping everyone under ropes, not mentioning names, keeping it all secret. Well, I mean, you were supposed to be an anarchist. What are you doing working for the CIA?
Well, they pay you.
Really, they offer me a good job and a good wage.
Yeah.
They buy really nice dinners.
But yeah, so I was excited to come on the podcast. I'm glad that Caleb was able to come because you guys, I've spent a number of years arguing with the worst elements of the Libertarian Party. And Caleb and I have collaborated on some debates with libertarians, Augustus Sol Invictus, but like the more recent one, we debated this guy Daniel, who is fairly high up in like the Libertarian Party of Massachusetts.
Okay. Fishman, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Dan Fishman.
Yeah. He's, by the way, great guy. Definitely, I didn't feel that he had a very strong showing in the debate, but I would feel like that. I was debating against him. But yeah, overall, he's been very friendly, and I think he was one of the. He's one of the more social justice oriented libertarians, and I see him constantly kind of putting out good takes on his page. So you know, I've been following your work for a while as well. So it's exciting to be here.
Well, you know, it's interesting. The topic of your podcast is kind of, I guess, you kind of root out some of the more like white supremacist and far right elements in the Libertarian Party, and it's interesting because I remember when I was an activist in Cleveland years ago, there was this guy, we used to call him Wacko Macko, and his name was David Macko, and he was the Libertarian Party candidate for like every office in Cleveland. This guy was a neo-Nazi. Like, I mean, he was a neo-Nazi. He handed out American Free Press. He didn't believe the Holocaust happened. He'd been like told by the John Birch Society he wasn't allowed to come to their conventions because he was too like anti-Semitic. This guy was a neo-Nazi, and I remember he would just present himself as a libertarian. He would come to all the left-wing debates, all the left-wing events, like all the anti-war protests and such. And I remember I raised the alarm. I'm like, this guy is a far-right extremist. And it's weird. It's funny how so much has changed because now everyone's a Nazi. But back then, I remember all these boomer kind of anti-war people are like, oh, we allow differences of opinion and stop that. You know, people might not agree with you. You're a communist. And I remember just saying, like, this guy is, like, for real, like, you know, a white supremacist. He's, like, a legit, I think. And then he had an event with what's it called? The Council of Conservative Citizens, if I'm not mistaken. And it was like a public event at a hotel with this white supremacist group. And finally, that convinced people to maybe not, you know, have him on the local anti-war organizing committee.
I got a question for you there, Caleb.
Yeah.
You mentioned that everything has changed, but everyone is a Nazi now? What's going on? Did I miss something?
I mean, you tweet out anything. I mean, I tweeted out that even though I agree with abortion and gay marriage being legal, I was willing to work with people who don't. And immediately I had all these people telling me, you want to work with people who want to murder me. You want to kill my whole family. Why should I ever talk? I mean, it's like the atmosphere has completely changed. Now everyone who disagrees with wokeness, you know, on anything is immediately a white supremacist.
Well, are they people who want to murder them?
But it used to be that it was the other way. I mean, you know, these libertarian circles were crawling with far right elements, and it was almost common knowledge that, you know, around the time that Ron Paul first got going, yeah, a lot of the people that were Ku Klux Klan kind of people were saying, "Oh, I'm a libertarian," you know. But now things seem to have changed, I think, and the Libertarian Party has largely changed too as a result of all of this, right? I think Trumpism was kind of a good purge for the Libertarian Party, right? I think a lot they far right elements, they like Trump. They don't need to be libertarians anymore. Am I wrong?
People don't call me a Nazi though. Nobody calls me. I mean, they call me a moron, but they don't call me a Nazi.
And a cunt, but other than that, never a Nazi. But Caleb, I want to go back for just a moment and share kind of a similar experience with you. It was back when Gary Johnson was trying to seek the Libertarian nod for the run for president. I was at the joint Kansas-Missouri Libertarian Convention, and there was this old dude there, and he was just, there was just something really uncomfortable about him. And I said to my buddy, who's that guy? And he goes, oh, that's old Louis, I think his name was. And he goes, he's a bit odd, but we all put up with him. Well, Louis comes over to the table. He's talking about something. And all of a sudden, he just starts going off about the Jews. Like, just going off. And I'm just like, oh, that's Louis. So I mentioned to a few people, hey, we should do something about that guy. And they're like, oh, no, he's harmless. A few months later, he's at the Kansas State Fair. They had to remove him because he was working the candidates booth. And every time a woman, no matter what her age was, he would comment on her titties. And that's just the type of guy you got here. He hates the Jews and he loves the titties. And you're right. That was always acceptable, you know, in the libertarian circles. There was always that one guy who liked Hitler just a little too much and didn't care about the age of the titties. But we allowed that. And I think that's kind of what's grown into what you're saying today.
Now, would you agree that's probably rooted, the reason these elements were there is probably rooted in the fact that anti-communism seems to be such a center of libertarian politics that might be the opening through which these people came?
Yes,
I mean,
because the anti-communism
libertarians.
that when you trace back libertarian anti-communism, sure there are elements that actually are opposed to communism, but most of the time that means the Jews. I think it's as simple as that. I mean, when a little bit of basic reading, you spend 2 minutes with the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, and it's like, oh, that's what a communist is, the Jews.
Yeah, right.
I think
Caleb,
that's what
I'm
Cantwell cited specifically, like is his as the inciting thing that made him think that genocide was all right. Yeah, it's horrifying. There's okay, so it's been going on for like a long time. Not obviously not just with the Libertarian Party, but I mean, SEK3 wrote for a notorious Holocaust denier publication. I think maybe the sort of like libertarian argument against civil rights was done through like Barry Goldwater, and so I can see like how there would be a crossover between people genuinely interested in liberty. I think to be interested in liberty can't just be license for yourself. It has to be liberty for everybody. And then people who are more or less want the license to continue to be racist or to do whatever horrible thing that they're going to do. You've got these two groups kind of struggling with each other. So, I would say, so Josh and I met, running
don't go into that story.
I was going to say running an ANCAP v AnCom debate forum. And, I noticed that like about half the people that would come in that were young libertarians would like start spamming racial slurs and stuff, and then they'd immediately get banned. But then other libertarians came in and, we would argue quite a bit, and we wound up becoming really, really good friends by the end of it, So I think there's beyond the sort of rotten aspect of the Libertarian Party, I think that there are other currents in right libertarianism that while I may disagree with them economically, I think that, they're still perfectly fine people, and they're pushing back on some of this. So that's another reason why
we definitely did get really twatted in New York City together, didn't we?
Yeah,
I had a lot to drink that day, mate, and I woke up the next day and I thought I'd been hit by a fucking semi-trailer.
I've thought a lot about libertarianism over the years, because I remember when libertarianism first became like really big, around the time Obama was entering office, Bush was leaving office. I was very frustrated by libertarianism as somebody who's a Marxist, and I was like, these people are waking up, but they're waking up wrong. Like, don't they get it? The problem is capitalism. I thought a lot about this, though. I will say that, there are good things about libertarianism. And one of them is that I think there's a lot of people who really have a desire to create. They really have a desire to go out and build something, to start their own business, to do creative stuff, to, launch a tech startup, and that is really good. And that there's that, that whole American dream, that spirit of growth, that there's a lot of young people that are really attracted to that and really have big dreams. They want to go out and do things, and they feel restrained by the society we live in. The society we live in is not very kind to nonconformists and not very kind to intelligent people. And they have a lot of frustration, and they feel like, I'm capable of doing more with my life. I'm capable of going out and doing something and building, and I'm not living up to my potential, and society is getting in my way. And I feel like those feelings in a lot of cases are very justified. I would disagree about the reason for them. They would say, well, the answer is, free markets, privatize everything. But I think that they're right in how they feel, and I can sympathize with a lot of those feelings. And that's one thing I've kind of racked my brain and tried to kind of understand how a lot of young libertarians see it. And yes, there is a feeling among a lot of young people, young men in particular, but many young women and people of all different nationalities, that their potential as a human being is being squandered by the society we live in. They have something to contribute, and society has just kind of cast them aside. I mean, would you say that's a feeling that a lot of libertarians have?
I would definitely say it's a feeling I have, and a lot of that is just from learned life experience.
Caleb, you're being too nice. I need you to be a bit more angry. Is that okay?
I want to go back to one thing for a second. Caleb, you talked about the woke thing, and you talked about how people were mad at you for who you were working with. I was just wondering, is there a line for you there? Like, if there's a government who executes people for homosexuality, is that over the line of who you're willing to work with, or where's the line there?
Well, let me ask you, first of all, like, if you're going to level a specific allegation, which I think you're alluding to Iran, I would turn you to the New York Times that's pointed out that has never been enforced. That
they've never executed anyone for homosexuality.
In order to execute somebody in Iran for being gay, there have to be 4 witnesses who saw it happen, and by it they have to see one body part go into another, and then they have to explain why they didn't try to stop you and why they were in the same room. So, that has not been enforced. Saudi Arabia, which is a big ally of the United States, does routinely execute people for being gay.
Well, I mean, I don't like Saudi Arabia either, but there are reports of Iran executing people over sodomy charges. There's specific names and everything.
I'm telling you now, Iran is bad to gay people. There's no question about it, and I brought that up when I was there. I mean, they're not good to gay people, and that's an issue.
You said 4 people need to be watching. What is this? A fucking porno?
Well, I just realized what I want to do for a career. I want to be the gay watchout guy. Didn't actually see the body part go in.
Caleb, I'm not disputing what you said. I just found it really remarkable and quite hilarious. They're like, well, did you have 4 people watching? Only 3? Only 3? Okay, well, we won't kill them then.
Right. No, I mean that is how the law is enforced, and it's the same for adultery, right? In theory, one could get the death penalty for cheating on their wife, but again, there have to be 4 people who actually saw it happen and then can explain why they didn't try to stop you and why they were in the same room. But yeah, though there are other laws in Iran that are anti-gay. Like they do have a law against, I think you can't make a pass on another man. That's considered a crime, and such. And so that's not good. I will say, from what I understand, there is a gay district in Tehran now. That is just considered the gay area, and the police just kind of leave it alone, and that's considered to be the gay area.
Sure.
And so, I mean, when I was there, that was discussed. I mean, it was in that there are differences within the Iranian state. I mean, there is very much a reformist wing that really wants to open up in some ways. There's also a hardliner wing, and there's economic differences, right? What's interesting is that reformist wing is more free market oriented, whereas that hardliner wing is more socialistic in terms of their economics. So, it's interesting how Iranian politics works. It's not the formula we have over here, but I brought that up, and that's absolutely true. And
So what are the people that were supposedly executed for homosexuality in Iran? Like these specific names?
There was a photo that went viral of 2 men hanging. And it said they were hanged for being gay. They were hanged for raping a 13-year-old boy at knife point. Now, I don't believe in the death penalty personally. If it was up to me, we would abolish the death penalty. But I think raping a 13-year-old boy at knife point is a little bit different than just being gay.
Right, but there's been more than just one incident of this. Like, are you just saying that's not real? Is that Western propaganda?
The New York Times. I would refer you to a number of sources. No, I mean they don't execute people for being gay in Iran. From what I understand, they execute people for rape, male on male rape. And that in theory, according to their laws, you could, but it doesn't happen because of what I just laid out about how you would have to explain.
But didn't you just say that they do if 4 people are watching or something?
Well, he said that's the standard, but they can't get that. It's like in the U.S. with I don't remember, like for the longest time it wasn't illegal to have pot if you had this license from the government. They just never issued a single one of those licenses. So it's like one of the what Caleb seems to be saying is that it's one of those instances where a law is crafted, but it doesn't seem to do what it is supposed to do.
Yeah, it's still a bad law, though.
I agree.
It's a symbol of a bad, sort of like cultural point of view that gay people are bad.
Right.
So we're gonna make this law. Well, he agrees with me. I'm gonna be best mates with him by the end of this call.
Yeah. No, I mean I totally agree. I recognize what the Islamic Republic has achieved, which is raising a lot of people out of poverty, building a huge amount of infrastructure. And in terms of the empowerment of women, if you compare the condition of women in Iran with the condition of women in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Jordan, a lot of the countries that are aligned with the United States, and they have women generals in the military. They have more women in their parliament than the United States does. So, in some ways, it's not as simple as you might think. There are definitely problems, and there are definitely things there that are wrong, no question about it. But it's not as simple as you might think. Let me just put it that way.
So, if they did execute someone for being gay, would that be over the line for you?
What do you mean over the line? What does that mean? I mean,
like, would you not be willing to?
Telling you that
no, would you not be willing to work with Iran?
Things are currently in Iran. So, I mean, the way that
but let's say there was an incident where there were enough witnesses tomorrow, and that happens, and they execute someone for homosexuality.
That would be wrong. That would be wrong. Yeah, I mean, and it's wrong that people are punished for making a pass on another man, and it's wrong that in Iran, that a woman's testimony in court only counts for like a fourth of as much of a man's. I mean, yeah, I don't endorse any of that. I don't think that one has to fully endorse every law in every country in order to stand with them against imperialism. You know, I mean, if you were in the old Jim Crow South, right, and a lynch mob was assembling and they were going to lynch an African American man, would you go, okay, is this guy for gay marriage? I mean, is he for abortion? You know, I mean,
but that's murdering someone.
You do that. You know who the main enemy is. You know that, you know, and I know that the U.S. imperialists are not coming for Iran because they care about gay rights. They're not coming for Iran because they care about women's rights. They're coming for Iran because they want Iran to be poor. They want to destroy Iran like they've destroyed Iraq, like they've destroyed Syria, like they've destroyed Libya. They don't like a stable country that is exporting oil on the international markets in competition with them. That's why they're going after Iran, and that's why they don't like the Islamic Republic. And as someone living in the center of the empire, I feel it's my duty to stand in solidarity with the Iranians or the Russians or the Chinese or the Cubans or the Venezuelans against this global system of monopoly capitalism that is tearing down countries all over the world and grinding people into poverty.
I mean, but it's not like you have to side with the United States. You can say that both of them are evil in their own ways.
Yeah, well, I am critical. And like what I said, I mean, you asked me if I approve of Iran's legal system, and I said, no, I don't.
Okay.
Nice. There is a comment here, actually. I think we're all going to have a laugh at this one. So it's from Joe Galman. Oh, look, a few fash libertarians and Nazville, which I think might be you, Caleb, and the fake anarchist all jerking each other off. Well, I can promise you, Joe, Caleb does not have his hand down my trousers right now.
Oh, wait.
Neither does Brent. You can fuck off.
My hand is down someone's trousers, but not
There's
Josh.
4 witnesses here.
Honestly, this person is spending their Saturday coming and watching us. He hates all 7 of us, and he's here watching us.
I just got a private request to jerk off on this live stream, so I guess I can make this person's dreams come true.
Will you put your hand down my trousers there, Brian? It's consensual, by the way.
Thank you very much. And with all these witnesses.
The funny thing, by the way, is like people think calling me a fake anarchist is like the biggest slam against me. What they don't realize, and Josh, you know this, in the freaking anarchist scene, like everybody gets called a fake anarchist by everyone else. you know,
Facebook is a terrible thing, Brent. It really is. Yeah. And I'm going to have to agree with Caleb on that one. Like, social media is absolutely destructive to political talk. Absolutely destructive. Like the moment that you disagree with something, you're the worst person in the world. You know, like
wait a minute.
And it shouldn't be like that. It should be like, here we're making jokes. We even managed to make Caleb smile. Come on.
It's not just political
Smile
talk.
Again.
Spend some time in a band chat room. You know, on Facebook. Good Lord, it's the exact same thing. Oh, you thought so-and-so wasn't the better guitarist, and you're not a real fan. I mean, that's really, honestly, you've always had that sort of snobbery in all these different corners anyway, but it is so amplified by social media.
Yeah, because you can't see the other person's face. You can't see how you're hurting them. You don't know what's going on in their life. You know, and so they become kind of an abstract to you. And actually, in a weird way, this kind of ties back to something that I was picking up on with the talk about Iran. You know, like as a red-blooded American male, I was raised to support the United States and to support. I was 150% behind the Iraq War when I was 18. You know, I thought that the American imperial project was actually a good. I thought that they would go to these countries, they'd destroy their corrupt leaders, and that they would build them up like America was. You know, I had a very, very harsh awakening to the way the world really was, and to like, you know, there's definitely shades of gray in all of these nations. I feel like a lot of people online seem to want to like, it's like a weird thing that you'll see out of like certain like very small Marxist sects, where where like 6 guys will like put out a newspaper and they're like, we take a position on this, and it's like a position on something like halfway around the world, and like they don't have any effect on it one way or the other, but like it's like they feel like they're having an effect on the world by taking some strong, uncompromising stand, when really, you know, well, what they're doing is fapping about.
Right. I love your facial expressions, by the way, Caleb. Like, constantly you keep nodding.
Okay.
And your eyebrows keep going up and down. I love it.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
I can't see your face, or I would comment. I would offer you the same compliments.
Oh,
I'm
mate,
sure,
you don't want to
but I
see
can't
that. You'd
your
have
face.
nightmares. You'd have nightmares.
You
He
can turn
looks
your
like
video
Sonic
on.
the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
It's interesting though. I've heard stuff about that. Oftentimes, like with people with like media training, like we do naturally nod along when people talk because it shows you're listening. It's polite. And sometimes people seem to think that like if you're nodding, like you're approving of what you're hearing, as opposed to no, this is just like a learned behavior that those of us who have worked as journalists, Caleb much more than me, just kind of pick up as a result of interviewing people frequently.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's feedback. It shows you're listening, right? I mean, if you're nodding, if you're reacting, that shows you're listening. If I was just kind of blank, if I was like, looking at my phone.
Oh, I didn't mean it in an offensive way, Caleb.
Yeah.
I said I loved it.
I'm going to jump in here. It's funny, both of you, mentioned journalism. Of course, that's what my background is. And a lot of times that person you're interviewing is looking to you on, is the timing okay? Is all this? So yeah, you're always doing the nod to kind of keep, you can keep going. You can keep going. You're good. You're good. You're good. It's a natural thing that kind of comes down to kind of timing and everything else.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah. What's interesting too. So Caleb and I met each other 10 years ago at Occupy Wall Street in New York, which I came down to shortly after becoming an anarchist. And like, that was just like such an interesting place in American politics because it was overwhelmingly like a left anarchist movement at the time. But like you had Marxists there, you had Trots, you had crazy people, you had like a very large, right-wing libertarian contingent. And, like a lot of those guys were totally fine, so like in a way, it seemed to be like sort of the center of radicalism of people trying to deal with, what had happened, which was, Wall Street had crashed the economy, destroyed people's lives and homes and had gotten away with it scot-free. And it's been very interesting since then to move from Occupy, where we were all together and united around something, to like the internet, where everybody's like cordoning themselves off and making sure to live in their particular bubble. It's one of the reasons why I actually go out of my way to be friends on Facebook with people who I disagree with. I mean, like, Hilditch, I don't know where you are right now, but like when we met,
I'm in Maidstone in England.
Yeah, I think you were an ANCAP. I think you may. I don't know if you still are an ANCAP.
I'm more of a market anarchist these days. Yeah, but I've sort of got like bored of associating labels with myself. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm kind of like at the point in my life where if something sounds good, then yeah, cool, I'm on board.
Same. Same.
Yeah, right. So like if Caleb says to me, "Do you want to go to the pub?" Sounds fucking amazing. Let's go. I'm on board. Yeah, right. But it's the same way I treat my politics now. It's like if you make a good policy or a good idea, then I'm with it. I'm with you.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so like we all grow, we all change, and I think like unfortunately, like on the internet, as I said, you can't see the other person's face. You don't know anything about them. They're an avatar, a line of text, or something. And also like it's really important to remember like rage and certainty are drugs. Like they literally hit your brain, and you got to think like.
I've seen you rage many times, Brent.
Oh yeah, I do it all the time. I think I called one of our friends, Joey, who eventually became one of the people that I liked the most. I think I called him a grave robber.
Oh wow, not me. Hey, we've been friends just as long. You're like me. Yeah,
I don't think
I wish I didn't buy you that Scotch and Coke in fucking New York City now.
Oh yeah, then that would have cost you $20 at the time. So yeah,
I was thinking it's about 15. Yeah, I remember looking at it going, "What the hell is wrong with this place?"
Well, go on, please.
I was just going to say, I want to go back for just a moment, talking about the Occupy movement and how things have changed since that time with the internet. But there was a time capsule there during the Occupy movement when you had Anonymous doing all of the great work that Anonymous was doing. Mm-hmm. And you saw this wonderful use of the internet where people from all different backgrounds, nationalities, religions would focus on one great topic. And Not the ones just for the lulz, although some of those were hysterically funny, but the bigger things, the Scientology, the helping, with different political struggles in other countries. That was where it was really showing we can all work together. And then boom, a few years later, along comes the age of Trump. And all of that has devolved into exactly what we have now, which is nothing but shouting. Anonymous is gone. The feds did a great job with that. So you don't have these factions working together and using the internet as a common tool. Everyone's in their own factions now and screaming at each other instead.
I remember, like, with Occupy, like, there was a period where I was like, oh, we're all connected now. We can all speak to each other. Like, this is going to build up into, like a new kind of 1960s style, cultural movement, or heck, even a revolution. It went from, like, I was protesting the Democratic National Convention, and I met, like, the people that worked for Twitter, and they were like, they were sitting there going like, oh yeah, we're pushing back against the United States government, trying to get us to out you. Like, for a while I was like, wow, Twitter is a force of good. And like, now it's a hell site filled with garbage.
Yeah. It's just a dumpster fire.
I'm just sitting in Belmarsh prison right now. And I mean, if you want to talk about Occupy and Anonymous and the freedom of information and all of that, you can't not talk about Julian Assange. I mean, facing extradition to the United States, the possibility of spending the rest of his life in jail just for exposing U.S. war crimes.
He's been moved. He's been moved from Belmarsh, by the way, Caleb.
Oh, where is he now?
He's I think he's in the south of England somewhere. There's another like maximum security prison he's been moved to, but they constantly keep moving him around so that people don't know where he is, which is what they do with. Do you know who Ronnie? What was it? I think it's Ronnie Johnson or something. His name is that guy that just fought every single like British guard in a prison. They did the same thing to him, so they kept moving around to different prisons, and that's what they're doing with Julian Assange as well. The reason that they do that is so that you don't have protesters out from the prison because you don't know where he is. So yeah, you were right though. He was at Belmarsh.
Back it up for a second. Hey, Stetson, can you put that guy back up on the screen?
Sure can.
Joe Gallman. This stream is just oozing with smugness and vapid sanctimony.
Then why the fuck are you watching, Joe? Fuck off!
Joe, I'll tell you what. You know what's oozing, buddy? The smugness and vapid sanctimony, and you taking time to even comment that. Out of here.
I know. You have to admire this guy's stupidity because he's like, oh, I fucking hate this podcast. I'm going to keep watching it. Okay.
Oh, this is just fantastic. Boomer Joe.
That's quite the boomer moment there. Yeah.
No, I mean, this seems to be the new strategy now because of Russia and China. The U.S. government, they don't feel like they can just invade countries. So now, in order to get leverage, it seems like the policy is now kidnap people. Right? They had the CFO of Huawei, Meng, who was like detained in Canada for years. They were trying to extradite her to the United States. And now they've got Alex Saab, a Venezuelan diplomat that they grabbed off an airplane in Cape Verde, and now he's in Miami. He's got a hearing coming up this week. And Julian Assange is sitting not in Belmarsh prison, but in some other facility, as you pointed out. And this seems to be the new strategy. This seems to be the new strategy of U.S. officials. They basically maintain if we accuse someone of doing business with a country we don't like or whatever, we have the right to just grab them in any country and fly them back to the United States to stand trial. It's quite scary. I mean, when people talk about global government and all of that, I mean, can you imagine that?
Well, if I recall, like one of the really disturbing things that happened during Obama's term was when he had, I think, at least one, it might have been two, but I think it was one actual American citizen killed, like by drone strike, like without a trial.
Aleki's son.
Yeah,
and like him.
And the thing is, like, if you're
both of them.
Like, we have this process, like we have the legal process for a reason. And if the government decides that they just want to completely bypass that, I mean, really, they can just do that to anybody. Like, what supposedly the guy he killed was like a jihadi and had done all this, but we don't know because we weren't able to put him on trial.
Right, and never forget what pasty face Joe Gibbs, or not Joe Gibbs. What was his name? It was Obama's press secretary.
Oh yeah,
Gibbs.
he should have had a better father.
Robert Gibbs?
Yeah. Robert Gibbs should have had a better father then. And you talk about vapid smugness. I was like, good God, man, that's honestly how you're going to answer that question.
Yeah.
Robert Gibbs probably should have had a better father too.
Yeah,
he probably should have.
Yeah.
One not so pasty. I always called him Doughboy. He just looked like a doughboy.
Well, and then Obama too made jokes about drone bombing the Jonas Brothers.
Yes. I
Oh
remember.
yeah.
At the correspondence dinner. Like
If they're gonna
there
take
you go.
my
That's
daughters, I
some
will drone strike them.
Yeah, I mean that's some I can't say words today apparently. The smugness. There we go.
Smugness and vapid sanctimony.
Yeah, smugness and vapid sanctimony. Get that.
Is it vapid or vapid? Are we vaping
Vapid.
the sanctimony?
I'm vaping everything.
So Caleb, do you enjoy this podcast more than your podcast with Vaush? I think.
Sure. I mean, this is not exactly my style, but I should probably get used to this. This is probably what most internet spaces are more like, right? This isn't, my highfalutin formality is not the normal way people chill.
I can see you smiling behind that,
Caleb.
Caleb,
I agree. Like, I'm an old, like I said, I'm an old radio guy. So to me, podcasts are still more in a format of a basic radio program, and that's just kind of how I've always seen it. And then I started getting in with these young little whippersnappers over here, and the thing the kids are doing in the old MySpaces these days, and so on. And so here we sit, and it's a much more less formalized concept. I kind of like it. It just allows for a lot more conversational tones without a timekeeper and all that sort of thing. And we sure as fuck aren't sponsored, so we're good.
All right.
Well, I like it because people went after Caleb because he frequently wears a suit when he streams because he's a
He
professional.
didn't wear a suit this podcast. I'm so angry.
Yeah,
I had a fucking joke ready for that, Caleb.
Well,
You ruined it.
Yeah, I mean,
he was very excited for that opening.
Guatemala. My wife is Guatemalan, and she bought me this very nice shirt. And I was thinking, what should I put on? And I thought, why don't I just put on the nice Guatemalan shirt? It does have a collar, so it's semi-formal. It's not just completely sloppy. I thought about
Still
this.
a job interview, right? Still a job interview.
You look like in that thing. You look like you should have like a straw pork pie hat, and you should be hanging out on a beach somewhere.
Yeah,
with a cigar. A cigar.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a very lovely trim. I assume that's probably all hand done, being from Guatemala.
I have no idea.
Oh, gotcha. You don't know how your shirt's done.
No, I don't.
You, buddy.
So tell us about Vorsh then. What do you think of Vorsh? Is it Vorsh? How do you pronounce it? Vorsh?
It's Vosh, but for some reason, people who don't like him, there's like a meme that they always call him Vaush.
Yeah,
so it's spelled Vaush.
I'm the one who came up with the nickname Jabba the Vosh, which I think is hilarious. But there you go. But
you think it's hilarious? Well, you fucking told it. I hope so.
And that's the only one who matters. So there you go. But my critique of Vosh is that his arguments where he's basically advocating hostility toward a number of countries around the world, the crass language that he uses. The kind of unfamiliarity with Marxism, that he has, I think that, people like Brent and I, who've been doing this for a long time, who take these ideas very seriously, get a little frustrated when we see some Hollywood rich kid who just started streaming and now, he's the expert on the same things.
I have no idea where he lives,
I'll push back on that a little bit because, I wasn't happy about the way he treated you. I've talked to him a bit since then, and, I sort of feel like a lot of the problems that political streamers have with each other would be solved if you just took them and put them in a forum or a Facebook group and everybody yelled it out, and then people didn't leave. And then eventually you come to see the other person as a real person. But the problem is that with streamers, it's in front of thousands of people, and it's got such high stakes and everything that it's difficult for people to work through, I guess, initial distrust and anger. So I don't know. I would say, with the conversations I've had with Vosh, there's definitely a lot that I've disagreed with him on. I really wish you guys could get along, but I don't think that's going to be possible after.
I'm glad you said it. What about me and Caleb? You want us to get along?
Absolutely.
Well, you need to unblock me on Facebook first.
Oh, I didn't realize. I didn't realize we'd ever interacted. So there you go.
We did. To be fair, it was a dessert block, but.
But yeah, I mean, the other thing is that Bosch thinks socialism is an employee stock ownership program. I mean, he said numerous times that under socialism, everything would be exactly the same as it is now, except every company would be a worker cooperative. And I've said, wait a second. So, we have big pharma over prescribing opioids. And so all the employees just get a share. Wouldn't they then be, more motivated to over prescribe medications? What if the military industrial complex was just a worker co-op, right? Wouldn't they, all the employees at Boeing and Raytheon be excited to make more tanks and bombs? I mean, when you still have profits in command, profit is the basis of directing economic activity. That's still capitalism, right? It's just the profits are shared.
Yeah, I don't like the guy, but is he really saying that? I don't think when he's talking about worker co-ops, I don't think he's like, let's make the fucking military-industrial complex a worker co-op.
I mean, those are his words. But everything would be exactly the same as it is now, except every company would be a worker cooperative. So it would still be a profit-centered economy.
Sure, I don't think he's talking about, like, the military. I think
if every company was a worker cooperative, would that not include Raytheon, General Electric? You have to make medicine somehow. I mean, and
that doesn't mean he's important. I think he's talking about like sort of lower scale stuff. Your local shop.
Yeah, but hang on. This is something we can actually kind of dig into. Because you guys are libertarians. I believe you're all fond of capitalism, like as a system. So I guess my thought would be like, what about capitalism? What about like running the economy based on primarily on profit? What appeals to you guys about that? What do you think it's going to do? And so to the point to where, you identify as, I would say pretty aggressive capitalists.
Which one of us is taking that? I guess
John, I think you should take that because I don't know if I really even consider myself a capitalist anymore. But
I call myself. I still use the AnCom moniker sometimes. Sometimes I say market anarchist. Honestly, I'm for voluntary exchange, however that is. However, people want to set up their lives with the community around them. Personally, I like the idea of being able to make voluntary transactions with people, being able to create my own stuff and having a chance to advance in the world. But I don't know. That's just me. I mean, economics aren't the biggest thing to me. Mm-hmm. It's just I'm way bigger on war and the drug war and,
to be fair,
like that.
Every podcast that we have here, we mostly touch on the social aspects, don't we?
Yeah. No, we definitely do.
Yeah, I'd say we're very social-driven libertarians, and it's probably one of the things that puts us at odds so much with the more right-leaning. And when I say right, I'm not talking even economically. Yeah, I'm talking about socially. When you see the trans jokes and the anti-gay jokes and the dropping of the N-word just to do it, it puts people like us at odds.
Yeah, I do believe in the idea of the homestead principle as a principle, basically mixing your labor with something, owning it. I mean, I know that gets distorted in the current market for sure, and there's debates about what can be done about that, but I do like the actual principle overall.
Yeah, explain this one to me, because this is one thing I've tried to comprehend. Why are there so many libertarians who like China? That perplexes me. I see many articles over and over again. I'll see articles where people that are advocates of no government, people who think Obamacare is full communism, will look at China, where the government runs the banks and the government runs like 50% of the industries, and even the private companies are directly told what they're supposed to do by the government. And they will look at this highly statist, highly regulated, state centrally planned economy and go, that's capitalism. I have tried to understand that a lot, and I have some thoughts, but I want to hear what your thoughts are. Why are there so many libertarians?
I'll answer that, Caleb, because China is capitalist. I know you won't like that answer, but it is.
Well, okay, but I'm asking you though. China does have regardless, we can get into that later. But regardless,
this channel is called Fakertarians. Most of those people that like China would probably appear on it.
There's a huge amount of government involvement in the Chinese economy. I mean,
yeah, no, I agree.
Let me answer this real quick, okay?
Yeah.
I think it's because at the end of the day, so many libertarians love an authoritarian government. There are so many. Right. It is an absolute oxymoron, but it's why you saw so many libertarians falling over to the Trump train. They prefer a monarcho sort of idea of a strong man at the top,
it's the
and then it's the Hoppa shit, and then let everything else trickle down, and eventually you end up with Ancapistan because this strong arm leader makes all the commies go away. That's
golden showers.
What
and the other thing is as well, a lot of libertarians, all they care about is less taxes. That's it. For a lot of libertarians, and libertarianism is a lot more than that. So as Brian was saying, when Donald Trump came around and promised them, we're going to reduce your taxes, but we're going to be absolutely anal when it comes to the border, they didn't really care because all they're caring about is the finance side of it, and that's not good enough. And that doesn't make you a libertarian. That makes you a conservative. We are not.
It's people who want liberty for themselves and not for others.
Correct.
There's a lot of that.
Yes, absolutely. If your libertarianism isn't liberty for all, then you're a fucking conservative.
Yeah, well, one time there was somebody who made a comment in response to where I was pointing out. My position is that China is socialist. It's a command economy. The government controls the economy. A lot of free market stuff there. And there was somebody who made a comment in response to me that I thought was actually, they had a good point, which is that China has a much bigger middle class than the United States does. And that, Russia also has a much bigger middle class, right? And that small business owners are almost promoted and supported by the Russian and Chinese governments. They do a lot. And that libertarians, as, small business owners, they respect that, right? And that they see the Chinese government or the Russian government doing a lot to kind of build up this middle class, small business owner layer of their economy. Yeah, the stuff at the top is all run by the government, but that middle class is propped up and is an essential part of it. And they see that and they like that. And that makes sense to me. And that part of the reason the Soviet Union fell was there was this layer of people, engineers, technicians, college professors, artists, filmmakers who felt stifled, by the Soviet system, and rightly so. They felt like their potential wasn't being utilized, and that there was kind of stagnation in the Soviet Union because they weren't really tapping into that entrepreneurial energy to build socialism. And that's why I think Deng Xiaoping had a lot of really good points in his critique of Mao and the Gang of Four, was that, is that you need that layer. You need creative people. You need a middle class. But my position is that, banking and the economy overall, you should have a state central plan like they do in China. But, that's an interesting point. And that, I have a friend who's an airport bartender, and he told me that before the pandemic, he would meet, Southern conservative free market guy who just came back from China and loves China and thinks China is like what America should be. He would meet that guy over and over and over again. And it was a little bit perplexing. So there you go.
Yeah. One of Lou Rockwell's writers lived in China. I remember. I actually had correspondence with him many years ago.
Was it Jared Taylor?
It wasn't Jared Taylor. No.
Wait, did Jared live in China?
No, I was just saying.
Okay.
Lou Rockwell published something from him a few weeks ago.
It was another one of his writers, and we used to correspond. And I actually asked him that question a few times. That was many years ago, so I don't remember for sure, but I remember, he had a real love for the small business community of China. I remember him saying that it wasn't nearly as I didn't like his answer here. You don't get in trouble if you don't make trouble. Well, I don't know exactly what that means, but at the same time, it was an interesting exchange of ideas. And there has always been that libertarian faction that has a great love of China.
Well, that is a weird thing when you say, because I've noticed that, having been to a lot of countries that the USA labels as authoritarian, I've noticed that in everyday life, there is a lot more like freedom. Like in Iran, I would see people riding motorcycles on the sidewalk all the time. And I was like jumping out of the way for these motorcycles, and in New York City, you do that, the police are going to grab you and, take your motorcycle, and that's it. And that in a lot of countries that are considered to be more authoritarian, it's kind of like, a lot of things are unregulated. There's just an understanding that, if you become a threat to the powers that be, the hammer comes down really, really quickly, and there's not much you can do about it. But But that is a weird thing, whereas we're becoming more authoritarian in everyday life. I mean, kids don't get into schoolyard fights anymore, right? If a kid is punched by another kid, he just has to throw his hands up and say, "Teacher, come protect me," because if he punches back,
I wouldn't. I'd fucking smash his face out.
Right, you're right. But if you do that, then you get the same punishment as the kid who punched you in the face, right? And that in a weird way.
And they might say you're a terrorist of some kind.
Right. There you go. Right. And I mean, and so in a weird way, like it is odd that in some of these countries that are more authoritarian, there is more freedom in everyday life. People learn to fight their own battles. People kind of feel more empowered. But there is also there is an understanding that if you cross a certain line, the hammer comes down and you're done. So it's interesting to think about, I think.
There's like Iran, Jay John.
Yeah.
I'd say it's kind of two different types of authoritarianism, or I don't know, methods of authoritarianism, but I would say both of them are authoritarianism. I mean,
sure.
And I'm not going to give the U.S. any excuses. Like, obviously, I'll attack all the countries you like too, but the U.S. has the highest prison population per capita. There's all sorts of terrible shit going on over here.
There's more prisoners in the U.S.'s prison system than were held in Stalin's gulags. Like. It's insane. We lock up 25% of the world's prisoners, like the entire world.
No, I know, it's insane.
Yeah. So this is interesting. So Caleb, I want to connect a couple of things. Because Caleb, you talked earlier about you have the criticism of the idea that socialism is simply worker co-ops, and I feel like with you guys with regard to capitalism, what I'm hearing is that what you're primarily interested in is the ability to be independent, and the ability to, that would be it. The ability to be independent, and not just yourself, but everyone has that certain amount of, security that they're able to do what they want, that they're not, on the edge of a knife. One of the things that I've noticed, and one of the things that I think Caleb is somewhat correct in when he talks about when he talks about socialism needing to be more than an employee stock program, which I don't think is a completely ingenuous way to put it, but it's good. It gets stuck in your head. So good job on that. So like socialism, it seems to have two components. You've got the component of, kind of the welfare state, whether it is welfare or it's people owning their workplaces, but then you also have the macro kind of finance issue, and we can run it like when you're running a capitalist economy. What you need to do is it's infinite growth. The vast majority of the investments that are made in Wall Street have to come back and make a profit. Some will, some won't, but most of them have to. If they get to a point where more of them are not making a profit, suddenly everybody pulls their money and industry comes to a halt, paychecks bounce, and suicides go through the roof, people get evicted. So I've compared a capitalist economy to like the bus from Speed. If you didn't just have to drive over 55 miles an hour, you also had to continually accelerate. And this oftentimes leads to like war and imperialism, and situations like what we had with COVID. I've pointed out, for instance, like Vietnam did a phenomenal job of handling COVID. And not only did they protect their people, but they managed to have an economy that grew all four quarters.
Vietnam is not doing well with COVID right now, Brent.
They're doing way better than we are. But yes, they got hit very hard by Delta.
Everyone is doing better than the United States.
Well, exactly, because like the capitalist world, for the most part, looked at COVID and kind of said, okay, what do we do? Do we save the people or do we save the money? The United States went in and said, we save the people. No, we save the money. And they wound up saving neither. Whereas like with Vietnam, up until Delta, they wound up being able to protect both.
I think the reason why they were able to do that, socialist states are doing very well there. But what about Australia? Australia's done fantastic, and they're a capitalist country.
Well, yeah, but really Australia's huge.
Because I'm actually going to
to be fair,
I'm going to agree with Brent here, but that's interesting though. That's okay, and I think this points to a disagreement that I have with a lot of the more mainstream, currents of the socialist movement. Is that what you're talking about? This idea that capital must continue expanding, expand or die. This is what Marx called the general law of capitalist accumulation. Basically, if a business isn't growing, it's dying under capitalism, right? But the problem that Marx pointed out is that growth cannot continue indefinitely because technology eliminates jobs. And then pretty soon you have products that can't be purchased, that can't be sold because workers have been eliminated from the means of production. And this is the built-in problem of overproduction. And that capitalism has this built-in boom-bust cycle that prevents it. It should, if capitalism were to work as it was intended to, it should continue to just speed forward forever. But it doesn't, right? It has these frequent gluts of overproduction. Where basically people become hungry because of abundance creating poverty. If you go to Los Angeles, there are huge tent cities full of homeless people. Why are they there? Are they there because we don't have enough housing? No, they're there because in the United States we have too much housing. And so as a result of having so much housing, people aren't getting hired to go and build houses. And we have a glut, right? And that this is the natural problem that capitalism gets into. It can't create unlimited growth. If capitalism could create unlimited growth, we could speed ahead. We could eradicate poverty. We could have, all kinds of things. And the problem that we're facing in our time is that the computer revolution has created a situation where labor has been drastically reduced. I mean, the role of the worker in production has been drastically reduced. As a result, millions of people have no place at the assembly line. And as a result, they can't continue to buy products the same way they are. So the governments are trying to keep the economies going in this kind of artificial way, even though the public can't afford to buy the products. Millions of people have no place at the assembly line. And we're heading toward the disaster of capitalism in the 21st century, which is this built-in problem of abundance creating poverty in an irrational capitalist system. I mean, that's the general Marxist critique, and the critique that I'm hearing from you, Brent, this belief that capitalism can make endless growth, but that's bad for the environment and that has all these other consequences. I feel like that's not what Marx was exactly getting at, and that's different than my critique. Do you think I'm representing the differences correctly, Brent?
Sort of. I would say, so there's a couple things to understand about the market. One is the market always does, it always crashes every couple of decades or so. That constantly happens, but it also always grows and always comes back stronger than before. So in a way, you could say that it could go on and do that forever. The problem is that it keeps crashing. So it's like crisis, everything's going great, crisis, everything's going great, and that just destabilizes society. And eventually I think it will get to a point, I think we're already at the point where it's caused irreparable ecological harm. I mean, global warming. We've known that climate change was a problem since the 70s, but the oil companies were so powerful and were able to keep the ear of so many people and throw out so much misinformation that essentially they've sold everybody's future up the river. So, again, it's the idea of, I suppose, putting profits as the central driving force within the economy. If we think about capitalism in a completely amoral way, if we think of it like a toaster, there's not a righteous way to make toast and a degenerate way to make toast. It's just a freaking toaster. So if we're talking about our economic and political system, I think it's important to kind of look at the giant human machine, the web of relationships between people and institutions, and kind of look at it and go, okay, why does it do this? And how can we fix that? The problem is that when you start talking about it, it's a lot. It starts to make a lot of, especially rich people, very, very uncomfortable because
as it should.
I'm gonna have to jump in here, Brent. So, only you could be talking about economics and start talking about fucking toast.
Toast. And you know where my mind goes with economics? Because, Brent, you mentioned the oil companies and all their corruption. Stetson, throw that last comment from the public back up on the screen, would you? The one about weed. A topic I know a lot about.
There's a person from Brazil that wants to talk about legalizing. I'm pretty sure.
Hey guys,
at least I hope we are. We're all for legalizing. Caleb. Yeah, okay, there we go. There you go. Next question.
But I wanted to say to Percy Og 91, greetings from America to you there in Brazil. And as far as legalizing cannabis, there's a big cloud for you, buddy. That's the
first time we've had it on the show as well. Hi, I'm from Brazil.
Yeah, that was nice.
I will say this: I don't use drugs. I've never smoked cannabis. I don't drink at this point. I used to drink, but I don't. And I am for legalizing all drugs. And you know why I want to legalize them though? So they can be regulated. And I've often pointed toward the illegal drug market as a great example of unregulated capitalism. Because when you take laws out, you de facto get the law of the jungle. Only the strongest survive. Only the most ruthless survive. And the illegal drug trade is an utter nightmare. And if it was legal and regulated, it would be a lot safer for people to use drugs. People are going to use drugs anyway. So why not have them use it in a regulated, safe manner? So in a way, my advocacy of drug legalization makes me kind of the opposite of a libertarian, which I think is interesting.
No, I think you're being a libertarian right there. You want people to do drugs, and that's fine. We're all for that. Portugal did the same thing.
And that's the thing. I will take.
Would you do a line of cocaine with me, Caleb?
Well, there you go.
Josh, you know,
he's about to leave. He's about to leave the call.
No.
But Caleb, you bring up a really interesting point. I credit you on that. And I would take regulation definitely as opposed to the form we have right now. But there's one thing I want to point out when you say that the drug market is unfettered regulation. That's why we end up blah, blah, blah. I see where you're going with that, but it's because the state has also declared war on those individuals who sell the drugs. If they were just left alone to sell the drugs, plus you had another market over here selling the drugs, and the user could really choose who they want to go to buy their drugs, that'd be a whole different thing. But with that war on drugs there on top of all that, that's where the violence and that's where all of that is really created. To some degree, the government itself has created drug monopolies amongst the inner city gangs.
Yeah, and the funny part is, and I brought this up in my debate with James Hake, another weirdo. He's the white Jesse Lee Peterson, like the palette swap version. When we were debating, I brought up, of course, that the entire war on drugs was predicated on Richard Nixon using drugs as the excuse to attack those that he saw as his political enemies. He got people to associate heroin with African Americans, and he got people to associate weed with hippies. And that way he could go after the anti-war left. He could go after the civil rights black community that he saw as a threat to him and his power, and get them all put in prison. And that was really the beginning of mass incarceration.
Sure.
But even prior to that, back to what you said a few minutes ago about the oil companies, let's look at how, cannabis itself became illegalized. It was because of collusion between the oil companies and the newspapers, being William Randolph Hearst, who then convinced government that blacks and Mexicans were going to rape all the white women because they were smoking the cannabis. And suddenly you have a national law on something that was barely even discussed. Suddenly it's, being clamped down because of that collusion from the top, the billionaires, so to speak, and their government buddies.
Yeah. And again, they hit you from both sides, right? Because it is a fact that modern drug culture, if you want to call it that, the counterculture of the 1960s, and in particular LSD, and the widespread use of LSD is a result of the CIA. I mean, it was Project MK
sure.
And the CIA was distributing drugs all over college campuses and all over the place. And that's why we had the use of acid. And that
Ken Kesey was under the MK Ultra experiments, and that's what went on to become the electric Kool-Aid acid test, which influenced the Grateful Dead and all of acid culture. You're right. It all goes directly back to the CIA.
Sure. And the inflow of cocaine, the massive inflow of cocaine and crack in the 80s was a result of the USA arming terrorists in Latin America. I mean, the Contras of Nicaragua, the paramilitaries in Colombia, they're the people that, that caused the crack epidemic in the 80s.
Absolutely.
That journalist Gary Webb, I guess he called himself, but that's a very scary. I mean, he revealed this, and it's crazy because if you say these kind of things now, immediately you just get a bunch of people. You're spreading conspiracy theories. That's not true. This is fact. This is not conspiracy theory. No one's talking about the Illuminati. No one's sacrificing any goats. There's no satanic cult here. This is stuff that our own government has admitted it's doing. But now
Absolutely.
So there you go.
Well, that was the crux of Iran Contra. That was the crux of it.
We definitely don't
taking
sacrifice,
drug money
sacrifice goats.
Yeah, we don't have Invictus here.
Well, and so you see, So you bring up some conspiracy theories, and it's funny because it's like, yeah, the CIA did it, like and the CIA's done a lot of things, but yet today we have big cabals running things. These are the kinds of conspiracy theories that have popped up that all trace themselves back to the protocols, but everybody's convinced there's
right. It's always got to be the secret club or this group or that group or the Vatican or the
Jews, the cathedral, this neo-reactionary. There's somebody controlling all of us.
Yeah, August Bebel called anti-Semitism socialism for fools, and I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, when you're talking about human beings and their organizations, you need to talk about processes and institutions and motives. But it's just like, well, there's this other group and they got more money than my group, and that's not on. We're going to redistribute the money to my group. I mean, it's just classic bigotry, and it's a very primitive way of understanding things.
We just gotta trust Q.
Yeah, exactly.
Friends, it's the Bilderberg group. They're all over this thing, and they're going to take us all down.
I'm going to go. I remember when that was the boogeyman.
The Bilderberg group. They chose Obama. They threw Hillary right off that plane. We were right there. We had reporters there in Texas. I got to go jerk off. I've got a lot of pent up energy.
That's a very good impression. It's really funny. So there's another podcast that I really like, QAnon Anonymous, which is not a QAnon podcast. It's people who keep tabs on QAnon and make fun of them and do some really fun little short fiction, which is why I started watching it. But they had a guy on who was a leftist journalist who was with Alex Jones, in the early night, the two of them shared a motel room when they went to go and infiltrate
Bohemian Grove.
Yeah, Bohemian Grove.
It was John Ronson. Ronson. He wrote the book Arguing with Conspiracists or whatever it was. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah,
he wrote the script for The Men Who Argue with Goats or Stare at
The Men Who Stare at Goats. Yeah, about a CIA
goats,
program to study goats mentally. What was really interesting was that he was both of them actually did infiltrate Bohemian Grove. He just went to a local store, bought a bunch of stuff from Brooks Brothers, looked like a rich preppy guy, and just walked in. And Alex Jones approached from the woods. Snuck in and so they both are there seeing this thing, and the guy, the leftist guy is oh my god, these people are ridiculous. That was the story. It was these crazy rich people that thought their stupid ritual actually did something, and Alex Jones he's sitting there and he's oh, it's a baby,
it's a real baby, that's a real baby, they're all Satanists, that's a baby, they're killing a baby right there. Because they were sitting right next to each other. It was fantastic.
Right, Brian, you need to try harder because Caleb's not laughing.
But so it's every time I feel every time the radicals start to gain a little bit of traction, it seems to be that this bigotry based ideology gets thrown into society to just point the mob in a different direction everywhere but at the rich people at the top. And terrible things happen as a direct result of that, and conspiracy theories in general have been huge with fascist biggest one was for instance Franco, who he did two things. He carried the severed hand of Saint Teresa de Avila around like it was the freaking nuclear football, supposedly slept with it under his pillow and died while clutching it. And he was obsessed with he was obsessed with conspiracy theories about the Masons.
I've slept with many things, Brent, but never a severed hand.
I'll tell you what, it's on my list now.
I was going to say, don't knock it till you try it.
No, here's the real question, Brent. Did he try to fuck it?
I would assume, based on what I'm hearing right now, yes, I'm going to assume yes.
One interesting observation that I've heard is that, that if you go into the military or you go into prisons, and those are places where you have a lot of working class people in prison and in the military, a lot of people that are very low income and struggling, and they're in prison or they're in the military. It used to be in the 60s or 70s, the books that got passed around among prisoners or among people in the military were Marxist books, and generally like Black Panther books, George Jackson, stuff like that. Nowadays, if you go to a prison or you go into the military, you're going to get a copy of Behold a Pale Horse, which is one of these Illuminati conspiracy theory books that's kind of anti-Semitic. You're going to get Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. That is all over the prisons and it's all over the military. And it seems like in these very working class spaces where you have, people in the military are wondering, what are these wars about? Why am I being sent over here to die? People in prisons have a lot of time to think about stuff, and they're, not at peace with the society. They're locked up. It seems like in these spaces, it's right-wing literature that is now what people get their hands on. And it's now when people have their awakening in the military or in the prison, that's what they turn to. And that's probably, if anything, I think that's why the right has really gained a lot of traction in recent years.
That's a good point. And do you know, is the Turner Diaries among them? I would imagine that's among...
I think that would be banned in prison, though. I don't think because it's
okay.
But judging by some of your comments there, Caleb, is it not a fact that the right has risen simply because the left is not making a good enough argument?
I would argue that the left is in a crisis, and I have been beating the drum out of the movement to the masses. That I argue that in the 1960s there was this current that was against the Vietnam War and such, and there was an effort to infiltrate it, and the government was manipulating it and such. But at least it was kind of against the wars, against the government and such. But now, what they call wokeness, this kind of current that is defending Joe Biden from Donald Trump, who's the next Hitler, and we all have to, and anyone who wants to demand AOC force the vote is actually a secret Nazi. That current is toxic, and we need to get to average Americans and just say, look, we as socialists can offer an economic program that will improve your lives. And that is my attitude. And I put out a book critiquing the bread tube ideology, which was a brilliant.
I had a look at that book, Caleb.
I have never made so much money off of a book. It was brilliant. I knew that they would.
Okay, Ben Shapiro, calm down.
Would jump on top of it and lose their minds. And they're still. It's been out over almost a year now, and they're still running with it. I still see somebody reading it out loud on their stream and saying stuff. So that was probably one of my smarter moves. But yeah, I believe that, actual Marxism has been kind of watered down, and that there is this kind of liberal, emphasis on cultural issues and liberal ideology that is coming out and being widely promoted by like the New York Times and
say emphasis on social issues.
Yeah. That's
explain
the issue.
Well, give me a couple of examples.
I don't know. Great.
You don't know? You wrote a book about it.
No, I'm just thinking off the top of my head. Here's a great example, right? I tweeted out that, I support gay marriage and I support abortion, but I'm willing to work with people who disagree with me on that point. And immediately, that tweet was retweeted at least 800 times. I had all kinds of people telling me I was an evil, murderous person. I had a number of people who told me, this is my favorite, you said this because you're white. And I said, actually, no, I was thinking about black nationalists, Muslims, a lot of non-white people that are against abortion and gay marriage that I would work with. The leader of the anti-death penalty movement, one of the most famous anti-death penalty activists, was a Catholic nun for many years, right? And I bet she's against abortion. I bet she's against gay marriage. But I would march with her against an execution. I know there's an execution in Texas coming up. The first Latino woman to ever get the death penalty is approaching. She's going to be executed at the end of April, even though there's a lot of evidence that, if you look into the case, it's a particularly horrific case. Many of the people protesting that are going to be people that are deeply religious, are deeply socially conservative. And I will.
And those are many of my heroes. Those are many of my heroes, Caleb. I'm a huge. There's a lot of like the Catholic faith that I'm really into, and I disagree with them on some of their social views, but that doesn't stop me from seeing them for the terrific human beings that they were in other respects.
Sure. I'll point out with regard to the Catholic Church. Hang on for just a second, Josh. Yeah. I will point out that when Trump was doing the family separations and throwing the kids into the concentration camps, like the Catholic Church came out and said pretty strongly that they were considering using ecclesiastical punishments, which essentially would be up to possibly excommunication for individual officers who actually went and did that. If they were Catholics, they might have been, completely removed from Catholicism. And if they were true believers, they were going to go to hell. So it's not as simple as one side good, another side evil. There's a lot of overcross, and people are very layered and weird.
Here's the thing. So Caleb, you sat down with Dugan, right?
Yes.
Right. So, and he's a third positionist, is he not?
No, I believe he refers to himself as a fourth positionist. So there you
a
go.
fourth one. There's a fourth
Yeah.
one now.
Lots of positions.
Fucking hell.
Out of control.
The book is called The Fourth Political Theory. That is the book of his that I read. And while I disagreed with a lot of the content, I found it to be very insightful. I mean, Dugin's a very important intellectual in Russia. And he was a founder of the Communist Party after the fall of the Soviet Union. He wrote much of the Constitution of the Communist Party. After the Communist Party kind of proved it wasn't going to, be able to really have a revival in the 90s, he and a guy named Edward Luminov, who's like this punk rock novelist who wrote novels about gay rights and stuff, they started the National Bolshevik Party. And then Dugan, from what I understand, was kicked out of the National Bolshevik Party, and he now runs a think tank called the Eurasian Movement. And he's a widely respected, political scientist in Russia who I disagree with on many points. I mean, his worldview at this point is fundamentally conservative. He rejects the notion of historical progress. He says the past...
It's extremely conservative.
And that's not my viewpoint. But because Russia is a country that is struggling against imperialism, and because he's one of the main critics of Western capitalism in Russia, I thought, hey, I have this opportunity to go where he's at. I will say, you try to, the way you speak, you try to be friendly and, cheering to your audience. I could have chosen my words a little more carefully. I found out I was giving that speech literally 5 minutes before I was giving it. And then it was just, I thought I was going to an event where he was speaking. And then they said, oh, you'll sit right here. And they sat me right next to him. And I'm like, oh. I said, how long am I speaking? And they said, try to speak less than 5 hours, okay? And I'm like, oh, okay. And so,
I'm not sure you can do that, Caleb.
Yeah, but there you go. But I tried to, I just tried to, praise Dugan and bring forward some of my critiques of the Western left.
Yeah, but he's espoused some pretty fascistic views.
He's all over the place. He's also espoused some very communist views, and his book, The Fourth Political Theory, attacks both communism
that's
and
what a Nazbol is, right? That's what a Nazbol is.
Well, actually, he was a member of the Nazbol Party, but he was kicked out of it. And the guy,
but it's an ideology,
not
just a party.
Come on. This is not a serious.
The guy who started and the Nazbol Party was actually much more liberal than he is. I mean, that was kind of a punk rock party. Edward Luminov, who was the leader of the Nazbol Party before it was outlawed, is actually quite socially liberal on like LGBT and issues like that. So Nazbol is this meme that this synthetic left has created that, if anyone kind of, disagrees about this or that, that means that they're a Nazbol.
It can't be a meme. If he was part of
Nazbol in Russia was considered to be a left-wing party. It doesn't mean Nazi communist.
But wasn't their flag basically just a Nazi flag with the hammer and the sickle in the middle?
Yes, because that comes from the Sex Pistols, is my understanding, right? That was a T-shirt that was worn by one of the lead singers in the Sex Pistols, and they thought it looked badass, and they wore it with their leather jackets and such. And but National Bolshevism was a party in Russia. It was outlawed in 2007 because of illegal activities, street fighting, some demonstrations that got rowdy.
Extremely reactionary party as well.
They were
always had been.
In Russia.
Come on, mate.
They are considered left wing because of their their invoking of the Marxist heritage. There was Russian nationalism mixed in with it, but in Russia they were not considered conservative. They were considered to be this rowdy group of young people.
Socially, they were extreme conservative.
They were not considered right wing. They were considered to be national.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they were extremely conservative on their social views.
Well, but in Russia, that's pretty common, right? I mean, the kind of, liberalism that we have here in the West. I mean, homophobia in Russia, anti-Semitism in Russia is something you're going to find all across the political spectrum, unfortunately.
Yeah, of course, you're going to find that as well.
Especially in the 90s at that time. The fall of the Soviet Union was a period where the country was in a huge amount of crisis. There was a huge rise of anti-Semitism. There was a huge rise of confusion and such. But yeah, and I don't want to fall into the trap of trying to defend a party I've never been a member of. I met a guy one time.
Oh, no, we're not asking you to defend them. I don't think you're defending them, to be honest. You're explaining something.
Right.
You're not.
Yeah, I'm explaining that politically, this meme that there are these.
I'll say it again, Caleb. Yeah. Calm down, Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, well, I sound like Ben Shapiro. That's interesting. A lot of people say that I argue
don't
like
sound
him.
like Ben Shapiro.
I don't.
Okay. You're not a cunt like Ben Shapiro. There we go.
No, you sound like a cross between Ben Shapiro and Chris Cantwell. Okay. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's just bad.
Who's Cantwell?
Oh, he's the crying Nazi.
Oh, the crying Nazi. Okay.
Yeah. But I like his voice, honestly.
Here. Just let me. All right, how's that? Is that? Are we getting more?
That was great. That was great. But no, that wasn't meant to be an insult at all.
I liked it before he was
the
the crying Nazi. He came in. He was somehow brought into our Facebook debate group. Lasted like all of.
I added him. Yeah. So
you
degrees of separation. You have
made
to be like encountered, right? I mean, it's like you got Dugan and Chris. I mean, it's like this is a strange world, isn't it? Right. But,
we can't. Well, Brent, if you remember, I made a sock account that was basically it was like a neo-Nazi sock account, so I could add Cantwell. And then when I done that, I added him to the group, and he was like, "Wait. You're Josh Hilditch? I fucking hate that guy." I was like, "Hi." That was me all along.
It's so bizarre to me how all of us sitting here can turn on the national news at night and probably see some right-wing figure that we've encountered in some Facebook group, at some point along the way.
Well, I don't know about you, Brian,
or literally watching the Donald Trump's second impeachment trial in the Senate.
Invictus called to dox us when the page started.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, it was the Liberty Hangout people were posting about us, like, who are these people? Because they didn't know who we were. And then he just wrote, like, dox all leftists at the bottom.
What a clown. What a clown.
I'm going to go on record for one thing, just because it came up with Ben Shapiro. So I wrote a play called Trolling 101. It was a short, 20-minute
Yes, I remember reading that script, Brent. You sent it to me about 400 times.
Yes, good. I'm glad.
you too. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, you wrote the Rudy script.
I know, but it was good. I'm glad you sent it to me.
But, I wrote that, and, I literally came up with facts don't care about your feelings as something for the troll to say before freaking Ben Shapiro came and made that his catchphrase. So it's my phrase. I thought it was stupid at the time. I'm suing you, Ben Shapiro. You owe me a quarter every time you say it.
Right. On that, Brent, by the way, now that you're on the Fakertarians podcast, can you please stop messaging me at 3 o'clock in the fucking morning every single fucking day?
I will I will message you at 3 o'clock in the morning. It just won't be about the Fakertarians.
Well, it'd be a bit of a, you want to be in my bed or something like that, is it?
Maybe we can negotiate, 2:45, right? Maybe 3:15,
Caleb, don't give him ideas. Fuck off.
Okay, at 2:45, I send the dick pics. At 3 a.m., you send whatever else, Brent.
Oh, I'll send some very strange things. You may not even be able to interpret them, but it will be sexual.
I'm sure you were going to send those things. I'll fucking go to the cops,
Statist. No.
It was a joke. It was a joke. That's what we do on the Fakertarians podcast, Brent. We tell jokes. So I said to Billy 2 weeks ago, I want the best joke that you can tell. Caleb Maupin, the stage is yours. Tell me your best joke.
My best joke?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Apart from yourself.
Oh, my goodness. Wow, I'm not a joke-telling kind of guy. Can you come back to me on this one?
No, you're going to do it now. What do you mean? We're going to be in 4 weeks' time.
The first joke that comes into my mind as I'm thinking of jokes. Okay. No, I mean, I'm just drawing a blank. I'm not a comedian. I'm not a comedian. I mean, I'm tempted to say something like libertarianism, but I feel like that's I'm not going to do that.
While we're discussing this, let me give you the best punchline ever. Okay, I won't even give you the joke. I'm just going to give you the punchline. Those aren't tomatoes. Those are last week's abortions.
Oh, I remember that one. Oh man, this is taking me back to middle school. Okay, so my joke. It'll be oddly appropriate. Okay, so the FBI, the CIA, and the NYPD are all arguing about who's the better crime-fighting organization. And so President Biden, he decides he's got to have all of his ducks moving in the one row. So what he does is he's thinking about ducks. He takes a duck and he lets it loose in the forest. And he says the first organization to find this duck gets the prize. So the FBI, they start searching out the place. They put informants in animal suits all over the thing. Nothing, can't find the duck. So the CIA comes in. Well, they burn down the forest and claim there never was a duck. So then the NYPD, they go into the burning forest and they come out with a bear. And this bear has been beat to hell. He's missing teeth. His fur is singed, and he's going, all right, I'm a duck. I'm a duck.
Brent, that wasn't a joke. That was a bloody essay.
Do you want to hear the most racist joke?
No, Caleb's got a
In fact,
joke.
it's so incredibly racist. I'm going to give this one real quick. It's so racist.
Here we
There
go.
is no
We're
joke.
about
Only
God,
a
we're gonna be in the Mises
punchline.
caucus.
Only a
He's
punchline.
doing this signal.
Yeah. Those
Oh, God.
aren't speed bumps. It's the Jackson 5.
Oh, God.
No.
Okay,
That is harsh.
nobody laughed. Everyone was like, "You absolute piece of shit."
You
I
weren't
condemn that
supposed to
joke
laugh.
as
That's-
irrational and repugnant.
All right.
Let's hear Caleb's.
There's a guy who moves into a neighborhood.
Here we go.
He
I'll
moves
listen.
into a
I'll listen.
neighborhood and he knocks on the door of his neighbor's house and introduces himself. And he says to the neighbor, "What do you do for a living?" And the neighbor says, "I'm a professor. I teach logic at the nearby university." And he says, "Really?" He says, "Wow. Well, can you explain logic to me?" He says, "Sure." He says, "I'm looking across the street at your house, and I see that you have a dog house. And that leads me to believe that you probably have a dog. And that leads me to believe that you probably have children. And that leads me to believe that you are probably married. And that leads me to believe that you are probably married to a woman. And that leads me to believe that you are probably heterosexual." And the guy is stunned. He's like, "That's brilliant. I do have a dog. I do have children. I do have a wife who is female, and I am heterosexual. This is brilliant." So he goes to the nearby bar, and he's sitting with a friend. And he says, "I just met the most brilliant guy today. He's a professor of logic at the nearby university." He says, "Really?" He said, "Well, what did you learn from him?" He said, "Oh, it's really good. It goes like this." He says, now he says to his friend, he says, "Do you have a doghouse?" And the guy says, "No." And he said, "Oh my God, you're gay."
All right. I'll
Caleb
tell you what. Caleb told a way better joke than Billy Bob last week. Nice one, Caleb. Nice one.
Okay.
But also,
That was
I really,
great.
I really
That was
like the deepness of Caleb's voice. It's almost like, when you get into an elevator, I would love to hear Caleb Maupin's voice going second floor, but you can't get out.
Second floor, please. Yes.
There's if the politics ever goes by the wayside, you have a career as a ASMR.
Yeah. Yeah. I can just imagine Caleb like, the lift doors are closing, leaving you trapped in a windowless, airless coffin, traveling down with 100 miles an hour.
I was in Britain when I was a
OnlyFans
kid,
will be.
and I couldn't get over it. So in New York we have the subways, and it's like, "Stand clear of the closing doors, please." But in Britain there's this voice, and it's like a woman's voice. It's "Mind the gap, mind the gap." It's like,
You've obviously been there.
I can't get over that. Mind the gap. Like, that is such an awkward thing to say. But
Yeah, well, if you ever come to Maidstone,
right?
Caleb, if you ever come to Maidstone, they go, "What's the fucking gap, you silly cunt?"
right.
Yeah, every time I've been with a British woman, she goes, "Mind the gap." Now it all makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, the gap between her legs, for sure, yeah. But
Yes, thank you. That's the joke, Josh.
Hey, fuck off, Brent.
Wow.
We just top in our audience.
Thank you, Josh. Yeah. Our audience has to have
Yeah, just in case anyone didn't know, we're talking about vaginas.
In case anyone from the Mises caucus is watching.
Well, the
They're
Mises
taking
caucus are
notes.
probably sitting there trying to go, what the fuck is a vagina? Does anyone know what a vagina is?
As that Toad guy is like hand jobbing one of the other tower fucks.
Or sticking hands down trousers like that guy.
They have no idea what we're talking about right now.
We're making fun of like the worst of the worst libertarians.
I think Caleb's brought the worst out of this, because we were talking about China, now we're talking about fucking people. Like,
The other thing I thought about, right, is, do you remember that awful kids show called the Power Rangers that was popular like when we were
I
kids?
used to love that show.
yeah.
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
The theme song of the show was like somebody was totally half-assing it. It was like, "Go Power Rangers, go." Like, I thought it was funny. So I remember looking on Wikipedia about that, That song has a lyricist. There's actually somebody who got paid to write "Go Go Power Rangers," and that cracks me up like nothing else. And
I don't think he had a job in the morning.
Yeah, there's got to be like a lyricist convention where that guy's like walking around, and there's somebody who's written like some epic work of music, the guy who wrote MacArthur Park or whatever, and he bumps into him. He's like, "Hey, what did you write?" He's like, "Oh, I wrote the theme song for a popular television show."
Is that when the gun loads as well?
Yeah,
Gets
right.
out.
Yeah. He's like, "What did you write?" He's like, "Well, I wrote, Go Go Power Rangers." It's just a very, very profound piece of writing. I envision that many, many times. That is the scene I'd like.
Do you go to sleep thinking about that, the Power Rangers song?
Yeah. So there you go.
You do? Yeah.
I'm really glad you brought up MacArthur Park though and Jimmy Webb, because yes, I know who wrote that song. He also wrote The Highwayman.
Oh, okay.
So I will quibble just slightly. I was a little too old for Power Rangers, so I did think it was kind of dumb. But also, the Green Ranger is amazing, and he has a Dragon Zord, and that's badass. That it's officially badass. And I was actually really excited because the actor who plays him is actually a martial artist, and was supposedly prevented from doing any kind of like mixed martial arts or whatever by his I guess what's the contract they give to people who like work for Disney and stuff with kids, like his morality clause wouldn't let him do the fights. And supposedly a few years ago he was getting ready, he was actually going to step into the ring, and then didn't happen. So leads me to believe that he may not be as good of a martial artist as I had hoped he would be.
Oh, I remember when you kicked me in the bloody shin in New York City.
Another thing I like to think about is the Washington Monument, right? We all know what it looks like, right? Obviously, right? But I was reading a history book when I was in school growing up, and I came across an interesting bit of information, which is that George Washington actually had measles as a child, and as a result, he could not do what that statue looks like, and actually all his kids are adopted. And that occurred to me, and I thought, there was probably a moment where George Washington was like sitting around with his friends, and they're all like, George, you've got it all. You've got everything, right? You're the first president of the country. You're the richest guy in the country. You're, the founder. You're all of this. But there's one thing that we can all do that you cannot do. And when you die, we are going to build a statue of that one thing that you cannot do. And that's why the Washington Monument looks like it is. They say it's an Egyptian obelisk. I don't buy it. I am convinced it's an inside joke. That's my theory.
Old limp Dick Washington.
Yeah. I'll tell you, that is exactly what I would do were I a world leader. Yeah,
me too.
What, build a giant monument of your cock?
No,
I'd build dicks everywhere.
I would build a giant monument to someone who.
Brent, I knew you love yourself a lot, but fuck me.
Oh. I love myself quite frequently.
I love you too. I love you too.
Yeah,
I would love to be a dictator and just like command that everybody just draw dick pics on everything, like just the most base, like that's like mandatory. If you want to own like a small business, your window has to be riddled with little dick pics.
Oddly enough, this does tie into something I think Caleb will be happy to talk about, which is Gaddafi. Because, like, Gaddafi as a dictator was like the guy who did all the crazy shit that he would do. Like, I remember he had like an all-female guard that like had like they had to have a certain number of buttons undone on their uniforms, supposedly.
I remember that.
And also, he would give money to like pretty much anybody who came up to him and if he liked you. Like, so there were a lot of people. I forget exactly who it was that he funded, but he funded like a lot of pretty cool people just because they happened to cross his path. So
I guess the question there is, Brent, how much money did you get, Caleb?
Well, it's interesting, he did give money to the Black Panthers. He did give money to the IRA. He did give money to Nelson Mandela. He gave money to a lot of progressive people around the world. There's no question about that. But as far as the whole like giving money away thing, Saddam Hussein was famous for that also. My understanding is that Saddam Hussein, like if you got married, there was a slim chance Saddam Hussein might show up at the wedding party with a wad of cash. And so it was like that was at a wedding. Everyone was wondering, is Saddam going to show up at the wedding? And if he did show up at the wedding, he would bring with him just huge wads of money and just start giving them away to everybody. And that's kind of what these guys are kind of famous for. I mean, I believe, what is it? Juan Perón there was that thing where they were giving away money too, and that's just something that's kind of like it's just like politicians like doing that, right? Doesn't the Joker do that in Batman? He's just giving away
but
money.
then Saddam showed up at the Kurdish weddings, and that didn't go too well.
Yeah, right.
And of course,
You
like
saw that with
we got
Escobar
the
did that.
craziest president ever, Trump, and what did he give out? Like a roll of toilet
paper.
Right.
That's
paper.
still
And
baffles
really
my mind
cheap
to
red
the day.
hats.
Yeah.
That still baffles my mind to the day,
Oh.
Brent. Where like where was he, in Haiti or something like that? Like there'd just been a natural disaster.
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico. Yep.
Puerto Rico.
That's
And
right.
he basically went there and went, I've got the solution, guys. Just bear with me. You guys need some fucking bog roll.
It
And he was
was, yeah.
bog roll. Yeah,
It's
because when you have a fucking tornado or a hurricane, that's all you're worried about is having a shit.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's because more or less, I mean, Trump's cash poor, so he doesn't have any money to give out.
That's why he won't release his tax returns. I'm convinced he's not really a billionaire.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
no, he-
convinced of it too. And that's
I thought it was common knowledge.
Yeah, that's very true.
He just, I mean, I mean, he really does. He's made up his wealth entirely. I mean, that's the whole crux of the the New York investigation.
You're talking to Donald Trump's favorite reporter, right? You know about that, right?
You're
not
Donald
know about
Trump's
that,
favorite
but
reporter.
Please tell us.
Oh dear.
Here's this story.
March of 2016, he had a press conference at the hotel at the old post office in DC. I went to it and I was trying to ask a question, and he on video, don't take my word for it, he turned and he said, "All right, one last question. Who's my favorite reporter? This guy here, right here." And he pointed to me. So Donald Trump is on video saying I am his favorite reporter. Now, I'm sure it could be interpreted as an accident, but shouldn't we give him more credit than that? I mean, he was president and stuff. It's not like he would ever say anything stupid. So, I appreciate his endorsement. I think on my next book, I'm going to put my favorite reporter, Donald Trump, on the back as a blurb, just because.
Yes.
And I think I can go for it. But that is actually on video if you want to see it. So I appreciate it. I thought it was
I would like to see that, Caleb.
Yeah, and
why didn't you call him a cunt? You should
I
have
hope
called him a cunt.
the New York Times would run with this or something because of my international. I was hoping that this could get some traction. I put out a trolley video, am I really Donald Trump's favorite reporter? And the only people that seemed to notice were leftists who don't like me, and they were just see, he likes Trump, and it's oh gosh. So I was disappointed by that. I thought
Okay,
that was
so Caleb, we're gonna have to make a deal here, right? So you work for RT, don't you?
I do.
You still work for RT?
Yes,
yeah?
I do.
So you get to the White House press room?
No.
Okay, but you get to sort of see a president. Of course you do, because you saw Trump. So here's the thing. The Fakertarians are going to go live around the president. Do you reckon you could get me in? Because if you get me in, I will call Joe Biden the cunt. Absolutely no problems about that.
Well, let me get back to you on that one.
Oh, come on, Caleb. Come on.
Can you get him a meeting with Putin?
Yeah, well, I have to call Putin and ask him first, but he and I talk so regularly that he's probably cool with that. So just let me, he's stressed out about all this Ukraine stuff. But after that's over, we'll talk and I gotcha.
Good. I
would love to call Putin a cunt.
Yeah. So, actually, you work for RT, so you could get me a meeting with Putin. I could call him a cunt.
This is I do have a Putin story, and this I was one of the people who taught me
there you go.
One of the people who taught me how to write comedy was a guy he worked on. He was the side showrunner for Married with Children, and he also worked on Arrested Development. And he was sent over to Russia to write the Russian version of Married with Children. And so he's sitting there in the room with all these Russian writers, and they're trying to come up with a joke based around something being black. So black like a coal, black like the night sky, black like the heart of Vladimir Putin. And everyone in the place just backs up. It's dead silent. And he's like, "What? I can't make fun of Putin?" And they go, "You can make fun of Putin once."
I love the fact as well. At the beginning of the call, or the beginning of the podcast, Caleb said he was going to leave if we character assassinated him. 2 hours later, he's still here.
Yeah, well, I'm not dead yet.
Well, this has certainly been a fantastic broadcast.
You've still got a fucking pulse, haven't you?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
I've actually really enjoyed the direction this podcast has gone. I
Yeah, no,
enjoyed the
I've really enjoyed
conversation.
it as well. I've really enjoyed it
Yeah.
as well. My opinion of Caleb has changed. I think he's a lovely guy. I'm going to start calling him the Ginger Ninja.
All right.
What have I been telling you, Josh? For like,
well, he blocked me on bloody Facebook, didn't he? I couldn't see any fucking things.
We just witnessed reconciliation right here live with the Fakertarians. That was a beautiful moment.
Not yet.
Caleb, we're bringing in the love.
Will you unblock me on Facebook?
Maybe I will. I'll have to figure out which account is. What is the name on your account? And I think I can go.
Josh Hilditch.
Okay.
Yeah, he has so many Josh Hilditches. Is it because he keeps getting banned?
Yeah, I get banned all the time. I think the last ban I called someone a penguin.
Yeah, and, but I agree. This has been really fun. It's very nice to talk to like libertarians who are actually reasonable. Like I think the last time I had this this much fun.
I'm reasonable, Brent. Really?
No, I'm talking about everyone else. You are not.
You're British.
I think no. Like the last time I had a really good conversation with a libertarian was David D. Friedman, and so like it's you guys and David D. Friedman.
So what you're saying is you're going to fund us?
If I got to go to George Soros and get my Antifa, what was it, super secret soldier serum, which by the way is terrible. He makes you to get reimbursed for that. He makes you fax the freaking receipt. And then it takes like 2 months, and I've got like a pile of receipts because I just can't bring myself to go down to Kinko's. You seem to have a lot of inside
knowledge about George Soros there, Mr. Brent.
Exactly. It is such a drag working directly for him.
I'm still waiting. Next time you see him, tell him that all of us here at Fakertarians are still waiting for our check.
Oh,
everybody says we're like getting paid by Soros.
Yeah, right.
But so far, no checks.
I don't get. How is China part of the George Soros conspiracy when George Soros hates China more than anybody else? Like, have you seen all the stuff he's saying? Like, I keep hearing this from like Tea Party, QAnon people. Oh, you're working for China and George Soros. It's like, I can't be working for both of them. You know? Like,
remember, when they say George Soros, they mean the Jews.
Okay.
Yeah.
The cathedral. By the way, I'm not sure why you asked us that question, Caleb, because we don't believe in that bullshit.
Well, the other thing is, I understand that in Indonesia and Malaysia, right, there is discrimination against ethnically Chinese people, and that some of the like Muslim clerics will tell people that ethnically Chinese people are actually Jews, that Chinese people are the lost tribe of Israel. Have you heard of this?
I have actually.
The lost tribe of Israel is the Mormons. All right.
Okay. Yeah. But apparently, some of these clerics in Indonesia and in Malaysia are telling people that the Chinese are actually Jews. So maybe there's some logic to this conspiracy theory. But there you go.
Oh, don't do it, Caleb. Don't.
Someone's flipping that right now. They've got me.
Yeah, we got you.
Oh, they destroyed me.
Yeah, here comes the Fakertarians. You just got owned.
Oh, they got me.
Can't wait to vouch. Here's that one.
I'll be canceled again. Yes, indeed.
Cancelled again. Well, you're not cancelled. You're not cancelled in my heart, Caleb. I love you. Oh, see, I really like him. Actually, he's quite a cool guy. The Ginger Ninja.
Ginger Ninja.
He's gonna write a book now, and the title will just be Ginger Ninja: When I Met a British Bastard.
Okay, is there anything else we want to touch on today?
I'm good. This has been fun. It's been a pleasure.
I guess maybe one last question. What Ukraine? I guess that's just kind of in the news right now. What do we all think on Ukraine?
Caleb, you got any inside info?
We don't want World War III. I think World War III, we can all agree, would be a disaster. I think we should listen to the Ukrainian president, who has told Joe Biden to basically calm the F down and stop overplaying the danger of some kind of invasion. I also think that, we shouldn't be sending lethal weapons to a bunch of neo-Nazis in the Avaz battalion and people who tear down World War II memorials. And I also think it's worth looking into the fact that the Ukrainian government is shelling their own civilians in the eastern regions. You know, and I was at the UN. The UN ambassador to the United States said like 14,000 people have died since 2014. Well, yeah, they've died because the Ukrainian government is shelling civilian areas in the eastern regions, and they should stop doing that. And I mean, I think that Russia's got a fair concern. You know, I mean, if Russia was sending all kinds of crazy weapons and such to neo-Nazis in Mexico, the United States would be a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you say that because they're your employers.
Well, no,
wait a minute, we did that, didn't we?
Well, you can say that in response to anything I said, right? So I mean,
it's true,
right? You know, so
Yeah.
you know, I mean, you know, but to be fair, I mean, I think that Russia, you know, their security concerns are legit. I mean, you know, we wouldn't want nuclear weapons from, you know, one of our rival countries right on our border. You know, we wouldn't want a military alliance, you know, expanding closer and closer to our border. I think they have some legit concerns, but they're not going to invade Ukraine. And I think that you know, Macron and the Germans are kind of like, Biden, can you just stop this? All right, he's not going to invade Ukraine, and it's like they won't let this die. And I think that's about the natural gas price. They want the natural gas prices to stay up.
I need to stop you right there, Caleb. Let's not talk to the Germans about invading places.
Did you know that the German Navy actually resigned in protest of escalating with Russia?
They have a navy?
Yeah, the German Navy stepped down in protest of this, and that the Germans will not give lethal weapons to Ukraine because they know the history of what happens when you give.
Yeah, well, last time that they did, that was it didn't go too well.
Well, I mean, the Germans actually are some of the, you know, they're taking kind of a stand here and saying no lethal weapons to Ukraine and they won't even actually issue. I think it's one of the countries, Macedonia, wants to send lethal weapons to Ukraine themselves, and the Germans won't even issue a permit for them to travel through Germany.
Right. They also, you would probably know this from RT actually. So when the British were sending some of our Royal Marines over to the Ukraine, they couldn't fly over Germany. Did you see that one?
Yeah, and I mean, and that I think that's pretty admirable on the Germans' part. They see that.
For the first time in fucking history as well. Yeah, the Germans
they have parades. You know, the Ukraine in Kiev, they have parades to honor Stepan Bandera, who was a Nazi collaborator and a participant in the Holocaust. You know, I mean, and they're sending them, and the Germans are saying, we're not going to send you lethal weapons. We're not going to do it. You know, and
but the Nazi government got voted out, right?
Well, yeah, but they still have a Nazi battalion of their military called the
Azov battalion. I know the one you're talking about. They
and also, where's the cancel culture on this, right? I'm called a secret Nazi like 20 times a day, but by the same people that are totally okay with the USA sending weapons to like actual like Nazi admirers and people who have parades for Nazi collaborators. Like, there's this blind spot in the cancel culture around this because I mean, we shouldn't be arming a government that actively destroys World War II memorials, right? I mean, that's just a basic thing, no matter what you think about Russia, right?
We can try to pick that blind spot up. We cancel some people.
Hey, Caleb, we get canceled every bloody week. So
all right,
we're at the heart of cancel culture right here.
We normally get canceled by reactionaries, but yeah, do you actually think cancel culture exists though? Because I really don't think it does. I really don't think it does.
Oh, I think it totally does. There's all kinds of people I've never met that have been sent the memo about what an asshole I am by people that have completely taken things I've said out of context, and I've experienced it. Yes, I mean, you know, I go places, and yeah, I mean, I meet people.
You canceled me. You canceled me. You blocked me.
Well, I know, but people. I mean, there's people who walk. I go to any left space, and somebody walks up to me, and they're like, "I heard that you're actually a white supremacist," and I'm like, "No, I'm not." You know, like I've been marching against racism. I support full legalization of immigrants. I have a long record protesting police brutality. Actually, no, I'm not. But I saw this video somewhere that said you sat next to somebody. You know, yeah, cancel culture is definitely real. It's totally real. Yeah, I mean, I've experienced it firsthand.
I don't know if I would call it cancel culture. It just seems to be a very online thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, isn't cancel culture
started
supposed
with, right.
to be online?
It started with Fox News, actually. Fox News started going after professors. Do you remember this? Fox News and David Horowitz.
Do I remember it? Really, no. I don't watch
They got Ward Churchill, the top scholar of Native American studies, fired at the University of Colorado. They just, and it was originally Fox News and the right wing going after like liberal teachers, liberal professors, and then in the age of social media, now it's kind of become more of a liberal kind of thing. But yeah, it's this idea we're going to single out somebody among the population for something that they have done or are alleged to have done, kind of, put them in the I guess you can call it the modern 21st century, pillory, and mobilize the public to go after them. And that'll intimidate people from saying things that go against the script. Now, in a lot of cases, it's things that shouldn't be acceptable, like racism, sexism, homophobia, bigoted remarks. But in other cases, it's things that are either misconstrued or things like, standing against imperialism or things that are just misrepresentation. I mean, my good friend Peter Coffin has been very viciously treated over something that doesn't even. It's like he had a girlfriend or something. Like, come on,
I'm gonna say one thing there, Caleb. So
Yeah.
when we're looking at people's histories, I really fucking hope people don't look into mine because I would be cancelled about 5 seconds flat.
Same.
Yeah.
No, but I don't think it exists. I really don't. I just think it's just this sort of like online invention that we've made.
Well, then it would exist, though, right? Like,
well, I see a lot of people who go, oh, it's cancel culture. They've said really bad things and they've done bad things, right?
Well, so it's good then. You're saying it exists, right? And that's the thing. Whenever people tell me cancel culture doesn't exist, the argument continues, and then they say, "Okay, well, it exists, but it's good." And it seems like what you're saying.
Here's my take. It exists, but it's very, very small and often very misconstrued. When someone is criticized, Dave Chappelle, great example, criticized correctly, because I still maintain it's a criticism of his lack of comedic content, honestly, as much as it is what he said in that lack of comedic content. That's not cancel culture, that's critiquing. And if and so you hear the term used in cases like that, what you're talking about are in those online spheres, and yeah, that definitely does exist. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. People that really didn't deserve anything, suddenly it's very mean girl cliquish sort of mentality is what that is.
Right. That was my point, Brian. Like this whole sort of thing that every single person I've seen come forward and say, oh, cancel culture, when I've actually seen why they've been supposedly cancelled, they've actually done something really bad.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not saying, like, for example, Caleb was saying, oh, I get called a neo-Nazi. I don't think that's cancel culture. I just think that's people being dickheads.
Certainly. But if you get it into a big enough group where it's all targeted, then that becomes a form of bullying, which is also a form of cancel culture in and of itself.
Take that woman at Chipotle, right? The manager at Chipotle, who those guys had come into the store like 3 or 4 times and not paid. And she finally said to them, like, you guys don't look like you have money. I think you need to not do the order. They filmed it and said, oh, she's saying because we're black that we don't have money. She lost her job. Then it came out, well, actually, no, they'd come into the store 3 or 4 times and not paid. And she was trying to like keep her job by not giving free food away. She got her job back and, and there was kind of a correction sent out. But a lot of people didn't get the memo, and she still, years later,
but is that cancel culture?
A lot of people. That's on her for the rest of her life, even though there's been a widespread acknowledgement that she really didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, but this idea
the follow-up always gets lost.
Yeah, if you Google her for the rest of her life, whenever she applies for a job or anything, the first thing that's going to come up is racist store owner. I mean, that's awful. That's
awful.
This has been happening ever since the internet was created. So why?
It's been happening since newspapers were created. Newspapers had this sort of issue all the time.
And I will also add this, though, and this is the underlying thing behind the cancel culture, is at the end of the day, they don't really have the ability to cancel people like they once did. Bill O'Reilly still has a podcast. And he's making lots of money off of that podcast.
And you're on Fakertarians podcast right now.
Right, I mean, that's the thing. So at the end of the day, right, on the one hand, yes, we're more, the quote-unquote canceling happens a lot more. But it used to be if the New York Times said you're a bastard, you're done. But, Bill O'Reilly, everything has come out there. He's still got a podcast. He's still got loyal fans who think he does nothing wrong.
Yeah, right. So how does cancel culture exist then?
Well,
how does it exist?
Well, that's the thing. It exists and it doesn't exist. That's the thing. And to some degree or other, like Dave Chappelle, right? A lot of people think his remarks are really offensive. But then there was also a lot of people who said he's great, he's tremendous. And sure, if Netflix were to ban him tomorrow, he could just start his own podcast, his own YouTube channel, and he got thousands of people supporting him.
Caleb, he's still making loads of money. Yeah. So, like, I don't know if you've been watching the news.
Right, he's not been canceled. Dave Chappelle hasn't been canceled.
Right.
Again, I'm going to point something out really quickly, and this is something that I noticed on with regard to Kickstarter. So, I've been releasing a number of comics on Kickstarter for the past few years. At one point on Facebook, I had a homage cover which was a cover that was supposed to be a send up to the famously most censored comic book cover of all time. And it was like a pretty tame thing where like a guy's just standing there. He's got a little bit of a gut. He's got an axe and a severed head, and you can see a woman's body behind him. And like literally like this made it to the floor of the Senate. Wow. So I was like, oh, I've got my Snow White zombie book, and I've got a character that gets beheaded, and it's a female character who's a zombie, and I've got another character with an axe. So I literally made a copy, pretty tame by today's standards, of this famous cover, and I tried to run an ad on Facebook. And Facebook was like, no, you can't run this ad. So,
sorry, Brent, I just want to point out that the Joe Gorman is still watching the Pulp podcast. He just called us all reactionaries. Dude, here's the thing. Do you know that you can close a tab in a browser? You fucking idiot.
Dude, reactionary means something very specific. Reactionary means you want to take society and roll it back to some point in the past. Leftists like myself and Caleb cannot be reactionaries. We are revolutionaries in that we want to move society forward.
Well, was he calling us reactionaries, or is he calling?
Yeah, it's calling all of us reactionaries.
We're all reactionaries.
You guys see the comment two up? More vapid grandiloquence.
That's a very verbose. Did you go to a posh school there, Joe?
Yeah, Joe.
No, he definitely did not.
Joe, we love you, Joe. You should come watch my streams, Joe, too. We'd love to have you sometime. Come on,
Joe, you're a dork.
This is fantastic. No, actually, do you know what? All 7 of us should go on with Joe, so you can let out.
Did we bring Joe on right now?
Yeah.
Joe, do you want to come on the show?
Joe has officially received the Caleb Maupin endorsement, so he needs to live that down with his fans.
Anyway, to finish my point, though, because this goes back to cancel culture and like what you guys are mentioning as well. There definitely are online hate mobs, but what I noticed was I put out an update. Swaza has been censored. Snow White Zombie Apocalypse has been censored. That update is still my most read, most liked, most commented on update. And I wasn't even really censored. I just couldn't run a Facebook ad and thought it was funny.
Wow, that's fantastic.
You got people like making whole careers out of this, of using people's tendency to focus on negative things. I mean, Caleb's book, perfect example. Like people lock onto that shit, and when you say that you're being canceled or you're being silenced, people suddenly start paying attention to you. You know, I mean, I'm about to release a Spanish version of Durruti that will hopefully go on sale in Spain soon. And like I was sitting there talking to the other guys I'm working with, and I'm like, the CNT is fine with this, but are we going to maybe get sued by the Franco estate? And they were like, that would be the best thing in the world.
That sounds great.
If we got sued by that old dead weirdo.
Hey, we're past the 2-hour mark, and I actually probably should run, but it's been a pleasure having me here. I really enjoyed being here. Thank you so much, and I hope...
One last question, Caleb.
Sure.
Right, so did you enjoy this podcast more than your podcast before?
More than what?
Oh, I was going to ask something else, but I wasn't going to be a dick.
Yeah. Did you enjoy this podcast more than you enjoyed your podcast with Vorsh?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can I ask one thing?
Yes, sir. I certainly did enjoy this podcast more than I enjoyed my time with Vorsh. Yeah.
That was an absolutely shocking accent.
I got one more.
You have destroyed him.
Which was more fun, this podcast or the Dugan conference?
I would say that this podcast was certainly more fun than the Dugan conference.
Okay, we beat Dugan.
You still sound like you're in the Revolutionary War there, old boy.
I have received upon this podcast. So there you go.
Okay, that's an endorsement. We beat Dugan.
By the way, okay, I've got one last word, Caleb.
One last word. What is the last word?
You're mocking my accent there, so cunt.
No. I normally speak when I'm not in front of a webcam. This is just my normal voice in the shower. Go on.
He's like Augustus Sol Invictus. He's got
yeah. I caught up the Invictus.
Here we go.
I've actually really enjoyed
I caught the mental disease of Invictus. It was transmuted, and now I'm going to speak in funny voices for the rest of my life.
Watch out, folks.
So there
No,
you
he's,
go.
he's British. He's British now.
Yeah.
Do you know what?
So-
We could recruit him to Fakertarians.
All right, y'all.
All right, we gotta let
Well,
him. We gotta let him go.
Before you guys do go, there is one thing. So I had sent Josh a link for this, and I think you guys have it. I'm about to launch my Kickstarter for the very first Swaza trade, Snow White Zombie
here we go.
Apocalypse trade. This is the first graphic novel I've ever done. If people could click on that and click notify me, I'd really appreciate that. Even if you don't buy the book, like, the more people are pre-following this thing before it launches, the higher Kickstarter ranks it. So
Where is that in the comments?
Cost me some
or-
mutual aid.
or
Say
is-
what?
Where is that? Like in the comments, or does Josh have that?
It's in the Josh has it, and it's in the private chat. You know.
Oh, was that one? That YouTube? Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for putting me
Well,
on
no,
the
my
spot
YouTube is in there too. It would be fun to link it. But yeah, Daruti, Shadow of the People, which about anarchist Buenaventura Daruti, and Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, which is about fairy tales and zombies.
Yeah,
All right, well,
here's Mr. AnCom trying to sell his products.
Hey, these are the product of my labor, sir.
Yeah, okay, whatever, landlord. Yeah, okay.
All right, so we should go off live, but thanks to everyone who's still watching for this 2 hours 14 minutes, and
especially that guy who's super mad at us.
Yeah, Joe.
I want
Joe
to have him
hates
on.
us. Me too. Oh, I want
Like
to
if
talk
he had
to
responded
Joe.
in the comments, like in the last 5 minutes, I would have just sent him the StreamYard link and just like, okay, let's go. But
Let's go, Joe.
But yeah, thanks to everyone for watching, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
Buy shirt, get money. No, other way. We get money. You send money, we get shirt.